Hello, good evening and welcome ladies and gentlemen to another entertaining evening of incredible and intense racing action in the sim racing magazine GT4 Challenge Season 8 as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC known as iRacing and proudly powered by none other than Oris Digital. We've made our way into round number 4 and after the highs and lows of VIR last time out where the rain definitely was in ample supply, we've got no rain on the cards today but some sunlight will definitely be needed later on, and don't adjust your TV set if you think it's too dark. It's darkness at the moment because we've made our way all the way around the globe to the Oceania region and we're down under to Australia for the one and only Mount Panorama Circuit. More commonly referred to as Bathurst in reference to the local city, this circuit, the central table and state of Australia, is one not to be forgotten about. 3.86 miles in length, 23 corners. On paper at least it sounds like it's a highly technical circuit, but with its name being that of a mountain, it is a circuit located on the mountain. It is a very unconventional street circuit in the fact it's one of the very few that really does take to natural contours of the road, and with the vast majority of its corners flying over a mountain, it means overtaking opportunities around this circuit are in very limited supply. You have two long straights, one that takes you up to the mountain and one that takes you down from the mountain, and the one going down from the mountain of course being the infamous Conrod Straight, where plenty of big battle can occur regardless of the class that races around the circuit, where it be V8 supercars or 30 more domestic and club level racing series including Hyundai XLs. But our drivers will need to excel today when they put a qualifying lap together if they want to take pole position. If you do take pole position, you may be on course to be taking victory. However, of course, a good strategy could also come in handy, and with the walls always looming large, those who push a little bit too hard, particularly over the mountain, may just find themselves falling victim to the rather staggering walls that definitely claim cars as quickly as they will see drivers fall. But who exactly will be our kings of the mountain come the end of today? Well, that's exactly what we're here to find out as we bring you the racing live from circuit side, and you tune tonight on the one only place you can catch all the racing action from round 4 and every round of this series, and as of course on YouTube at youtube.com and search for Paul Walsh Productions or PWP. In the content, if you have myself, my name is Paul Walsh, I'm initiating, I'll be your commentator throughout the season, and in terms of our schedule for today, times in British Summertime BST or Universal Coordinate Time at +1, that's UTC +1, as we can see in approximately 13 minutes time at 8:15, we're making our way into our qualifying session. Some sunlight will definitely be on its way at that point, and we'll be seeing our drivers all out there looking to go for pole position, and knowing that it's going to be absolutely critical today, whether it's overall or in the AM class, after which we'll take a 5-minute breather before making our way to the grid for our one and only 60-minute feature race, due to get underway at approximately 25 to 9. And we can expect it's definitely going to be a race. It's going to be a bit of a roller coaster ride, and all our drivers will be absolutely on the limit trying to go for victory as they wrap up the first half of the season. But as we make our way into this round, well, of course, it's only appropriate we bring you up to speed with the story thus far, and particularly after a very intense round number 3, well, there's plenty to talk about from VIR, and let's bring you up to speed with it. Because as we can see, we now made our way to Australia. It is the 14th of April, another Tuesday comes around 2 weeks after the previous one. But back on the 31st of March 2026, we are at the Virginia International Raceway. And what exactly went down when we made our way towards Central North America? What we got to see in round number 3 was that the weather played a huge factor at a circuit was always going to be difficult to race at, given the fact it's quite a narrow circuit and a highly technical one. The rain was in plentiful supply in both practice and qualifying, and it continued to come and go throughout the qualifying session, which meant that suddenly all the laps were very topsy-turvy, and our drivers needed to find their best means of negotiating the puddles and flying water streams around VIR. But when we did go racing, well, rain fell for the opening 10 minutes of the race, and then it stopped, and the sun came out 20 minutes into the race, and for the final 40 minutes, it was a circuit that was gradually drying and then rapidly drying as time went on, and therefore knowing when to transition to the slick tyre was absolutely pivotal in the 2-stop race. But what exactly occurred over the course of it in terms of the headlines? Well, many got the transition to the slick tyre wrong, and indeed as they made their way out of the pit lane going in towards turn number 1, we saw several drivers go for a major spin. Some big names getting it wrong, but also some others got it absolutely right. And some drivers decided to try and stay on wet tyres all the way to the end, including Matthias Pentelar and also Niels Kula, and well, their survival rate was mixed. Niels Kula having a huge instant from the lead of the AM class. We looked absolutely set to take the AM victory in what would have been an incredible strategic masterclass. Meanwhile, Matthias Pentelar almost stealing away the overall win, but he wasn't quite able to do it given the pace of your winner. But who exactly was your winner from last time out in Australia? Well, it was none other than Daniel Perry overall. He took the pole position by the best part of 6.5 tenths over Stuart Reynolds, and his Porsche was absolutely flying in the wet conditions, whereas the Mercedes of Reynolds was looking to try and find torque in second gear. But with that, when we did go green flag racing, well, it was Daniel Perry's lead that opened up very quickly, but by the end of lap number 1, having already created himself almost a 3-second gap over Guy Edwards, a huge slide towards the very end of lap, so he relegated back, and so he would stay 1 second ahead of Guy Edwards all the way through the opening 15 minutes. But as time went on, he started to settle down a little more, and the battling started to occur further behind, and then he was able to start to gradually gap the field, especially when we saw Guy Edwards have some major errors on laps 5 and 6. Although there was a bit of a contentious moment when strategy started to play its key part, whereby Nils Core was able to undercut in the pit lane in terms of the amount of fuel he'd saved versus Perry, and he got very close to being able to overtake him on pit lane exit. How the two of them rubbed elbows, and in the end, Nils Core had an unsafe pit exit as he crossed the white line, and therefore he picked up what's a drive-through penalty, and Perry was able to carry on and proceed to take the win over time, looking absolutely unstoppable when he transitioned to the dry tyre in his second pit stop, although he would have been thankful for the fact Matthias Penslar did not have the ability to do the one-stop strategy. He fell a lap short of the one-stop, as otherwise he would have been able to steal the win away from Daniel Perry, as everyone was on the two-stop, but there was the opportunity perhaps to chase the one-stop for those who dared to fuel save to the absolute maximum. But in the AM class, meanwhile, Rob Sharp, he missed round number 2. He was on holiday, but upon returning, he made it another win. Indeed, he left to go on holiday with a win in our season opener at the Autodromo International Enzo Edina Ferrari. He skipped Long Beach, and he came back with a win at VIR. But if you'd asked him, was he going to win the race based on his qualifying performance, he would have said to you there wasn't a chance, given the fact he started 11th in class and 21st overall because he struggled with the conditions in qualifying. But as he got used to him in the race, many other of his rivals all started to fall apart over the race distance, whilst Rob Sharp settled down very quickly and pitted quite early for his first pit stop to widen his mid-stint and therefore give himself the best possible opportunity to gauge when it was the time to go to the slicks for his second pit stop. And that well-timed transition, well, we got to see him thrive, but Martin Rendell was always chasing towards the very end, and was a battle for fourth that soon became a battle for third, with Lee Berridge falling 3 laps short on the one stop, and then a battle for second because Steve Codman had a late off on lap 27, and then it was the battle for the win between Sharp and Rendell, given the fact that Nils Cooler had the huge incident on lap number 24, which spoiled his opportunity to complete the race on a single set of wet tyres, and it was Rob Sharp's win by only 9 tenths over Martin Rendell, and those were the headline stories from last time out in round number 3. So here we are today then, on the 14th of April for the Mount Panorama Circuit, and what exactly will be the headlines emerging from this one? We're about to find out as we make our way into the depths of the Australian circuit. But before we talk a little bit more about our circuit, we've recapped our winners and the headlines from our previous round. How exactly did the standings stand after 3 rounds? We begin with the Drivers' Overall Championship, and here we can see Stuart Reynolds leading by 11 points over Daniel Perry. Now, Perry has been able to score some points back, and he'll be pleased to have done that, with Reynolds in having to settle for a 3rd place finish last time out. Indeed, it was a struggle in those wet conditions at VIR, and despite 4 spins over the race distance, including a premature spin from his transition to the dry tyre, he was able to get it back together and just about take that 3rd place because Nils Core just ran out of fuel before the finish line, and Reynolds was there to pick up the pieces of the final spot on the podium. Daniel Perry, well, he was very pleased to have taken that dominant pole position and the win in the wet, and he'll be hoping that the wet conditions will favour him later on in the season when they do come back. But indeed, today, with dry skies expected all the way through Bathurst, it might be a bit of an uphill battle for Daniel Perry in his plucky Porsche. Meanwhile, Matthias Penslar sits in 3rd place there for RD Sim Sport, and was 6th in qualifying, 2nd in the race, and whilst he may have only managed that 6th place in qualifying, he drove a very well managed race in the end where he only had 1 incident point and made no major errors whatsoever, whereas everyone else was losing their cool. He definitely was not. He was as cool as a cucumber, and well, in the end he opted for a 2-stop when he remained on the same wet tyres, and well, some were wondering whether he was going for the 1-stop, but he couldn't quite get it done, but he definitely made sure he took a very comfortable 2nd place finish behind Daniel Perry. But as we can see there, behind him, it's Nils Core in 4th place for Satellite Racing, and right now only a further 5 points behind, and soon ahead of Ben Idris Abdullahi, his teammate. The team are definitely looking quite strong so far this season. Chris Jennings sits in 6th there, joint with Guy Edwards, both on 34 points, although the Axis Sim Sport driver in there was a bit of an anomalous land once again. Meanwhile, for Guy Edwards, it was all looking good for a podium until it wasn't, with his early mistakes costing him very dear. Matthias Thames sits in 8th for Fury Sim Sport, a point behind, but the best part there of 7 ahead of Rob Sharp, the leading AM driver in the Overall Drivers' Championship, with a huge result last time out for Bathurst Racing, moving into the top 10. The first time we've ever seen an AM driver inside the top 10 of the Overall Drivers' Championship since the inception of the AM class in Season 7. So Rob Sharp definitely going some, and bringing with him only 2 points behind Stephen Codman for Track Mouse Racing and Paul Goffin for Sim Racing Magazine. The trio separated by only 3 points. Daniel Osler sits in 12th there for Paddock Motorsport, not picking up major points last time out, and therefore falling down the ranks, with Mark Johnson only behind him by a single point, as is Ollie Carwadine. And round off your top 15, it's Dennis Van Beelen for Chicane Online Racing. Nils Cooler sits in 16th place there on 18 points for Axis Sim Sports, ahead of Ian Anderson for the See You Next Tuesday team. He's joined some points, but ahead of Martin Rendell based on result countback. And well, Anderson definitely looked impressive last time out, and we'll tell you a little bit more about his story very shortly, with Gary Toole in 19th place of GST Motorsport, ahead of RS Racing's Ryan Penny, only based on result countback, and the same applying there for Simon Povey for 6-7 Motorsport. Jules Garner, Lee Berridge and Andy Chell complete the run to 24th, with Kim Such join the points alongside him, and the RS Racing drive 3 ahead of Heinz Mayer, and yet score any points, Andy Marsden, John Roberts and Matty Wild. Then to the AM class standings we come, and this is of course where all the positions are just in the points are paid to AM drivers based on their class position positions in each race, and as we can see, Paul Goffin leads the way by only 2 points over Mark Johnson, and well, it was not a day to be remembered at VIR. Indeed, it was a day he probably forgot, indeed many would have forgot that Paul Goffin was even on the grid, given he was entirely anonymous over the race distance, 9th place in qualifying, 9th in the race, and well, his pace in the wet was very limited. He definitely prefers dry conditions, the Sim Racing Magazine driver, and he struggled in the opening 10 laps of the race, but once he started to build up some confidence, he was able to push a little bit more and make some steady progress, although he did finish a lap down the end. He's holding on to that championship lead for now, and he's definitely got to try and bounce back today if he wants to hold on to it, because only 2 behind is Mark Johnson, the Track Mouse Racing driver, and well, he took pole position, he finished 10th, and well, you've got to ask yourself, when are the difficulties going to end for Track Mouse Racing? It didn't work out for him nor his teammate Stephen Codman last time out, although they had some huge moments, but the problem was it was a premature transition to the slick tyre with the second pit stop, and that completely broke down what was the opportunity for him and his teammate to be able to make the big score there, and therefore it meant he lost out on that opportunity to podium and fell all the way down the order. Rob Sharp, meanwhile, has lost that 3rd place in terms of being ahead of a driver. He's now joined at the hip by Ollie Carwadine for Owen Worthy, although Sharp is ahead based on result countback in theory, given the fact he has 2 wins to Carwadine's 0. However, the Owen Worthy driver right now impressing many, particularly at Long Beach, but also at VIR last time out. And Rob Sharp on his return to the racing, well, he's already allocated his drop score to Long Beach, but he's looking very quick at the moment in those changeable conditions, but how will he be in the dry today? Stephen Codman sits in 5th place for Track Mouse Racing at 9 points behind, and whilst your top 4 are separated by only 3 points, it's a sizable gap to the Track Mouse Racing driver, and he knows he's got to get his head down today after it all went wrong at VIR last time out, and he's ahead of Ryan Penny by 2 points, who in turn is 2 ahead of Niels Kula for Axis Sim Sport. It's 3 more to Jules Gardner for SRM, ahead of Martin Rendell, only based on result countback, and then Kim Such completes the top 10 for RS Racing. It's a point to Ian Anderson for See You Next Tuesday, who was very impressive in the opening stint in the wet conditions. He looked very good in his Aston Martin V8 Vantage. However, when we started to see the dry conditions come about, the Aston Martin drive started to struggle a little bit and had a spin, had a couple of offs, and those really circumvented what could have been a great result for him. But still, he's pushing forward, and we look forward to seeing what he can do today. Andy Chell sits in 12th place there for QuakeMass Motorsport, 5 behind, but the best part of 8 ahead of Gary Toole. And from the GFT Motorsport drives a further 4 points to Heinz Manley Berridge, with Matty Wild, John Roberts and Andy Marsden completing your AM Drivers' Championship standings. As for the team's championship standings, we can see after 3 rounds, Fury Simsport lead by 14 points over Satellite Racing, and well, it's 2 and 4 at the very front, but right now Fury Simsport definitely putting in the hard work to remain on top, and their advantage has been slightly reduced given Thames Nightmare Day, but they'll be grateful for the fact they still picked up a major result from Reynolds, and therefore it keeps them safe. Satellite Racing, well, they're gaining on the leaders, but they're ruining the fact they missed out on the podium last time out, 100 metres on the finish in particular for Niels Core at VIR, and Paddock Motorsport a further 8 points behind there. Well, opposite ends of the spectrum for their drives, with Perry's huge win offset by no points to Daniel Osler, and they need to find a balance coming into this round, because Axis Simsport, meanwhile, they lead the battle for the best of the rest in 4th place, 5 ahead of 6-7 Motorsport, and Axis Simsport have moved from 5th to 4th. They missed the major opportunity for Niels Kula to score those points. However, Chris Jennings once again bagging some very solid points, and Kula doing the same right at the very end, with 6-7 Motorsport dropping down to 5th, no points gained, and they are majorly at risk now for an outside of the top 5 today, and the team that will try and take it off them will be Track Mouse Racing, 2 behind. Ryan Worthy sit in 7th place out on 25 points, 2 ahead of Sim Racing Magazine, and a further 3 ahead of RS Racing, and it's Boosted Motorsport with 8 points to name who complete your team's championship tally. But just before we come to our circuit, we need to give you a quick recap of the prizes from last round. And firstly, our round 3 medal winners. A huge congratulations goes to your overall race winner, his first win of the season, of Daniel Perry. Congratulations to him, a very well-deserved winner's medal at that. We also do have to give a big mention there to the AM class race winner of Rob Sharp there, making it 2 wins in 2 rounds he's attended. The safest driver award went to Matthias Penslar with only a single instant point over the entire distance, and a very impressive performance, and well, he'll be absolutely ecstatic about that. And the move of the race award, we owe you 2 of these because we we did not have the opportunity to bring up speed of the round 2 move of the race award because it had not been decided going into round number 3. But we start with the round 3 winner, and that is Stephen Codman. And that is for this move, ladies and gentlemen. Brace yourselves, because this is definitely an exciting one. And so as we come on to our move of the race from Stephen Codman, and the footage does start to play out in your picture. Well, this was him chasing down Niels Kula on the way towards what was drying conditions of EIR. Now making his way through the sweeping bends, hitting in towards South Bend. You can see Kula not quite on the racing line there, but going very defensive as he made his way down towards Oak Tree. And how do you beat a very defensive Porsche driver? Well, you may try to go round the outside, but of course, we're on a Ford Mustang, so you've got a lot of power, and he goes for the cut back here, but Kula knows what's coming and decides immediately to pull right into the middle of the road. And in the end, Codman blasted his way on past to make that move happen. And definitely some absolute magic there from Stephen Codman. And congratulations to him for being our move of the race winner for round number 3. But as for our round 2 winner, well, that went to Paul Goffin for this very quick and decisive move, ladies and gentlemen. And well done to him for this at Long Beach, because as we cut to your footage, it was the battle for the AM win. That was your top 4 all together. And it was Paul Goffin looking up the inside, a corner that outwitted so many on the brakes, but not him, as he dived up the inside of Stephen Codman and went all in for it and took the lead there, and that would be the result that take victory to him. Well done to Paul Goffin for the round 2 move of the race at Long Beach. But with that, we now make our way to talking a little bit about a host circuit as qualifying is about to get underway, and we can see we are here today at the Mount Panorama Circuit's full course, located near the city of Bathurst in the state of New South Wales in Australia. 23 corners, many of them household names, whether it be Hell Corner at turn number 1 all the way through to Murray's at turn number 23 at the end, and a huge thank you to iRacing.com, not just their brilliant circuit maps, but the absolutely fantastic simulator they're all contained within. And indeed, this circuit really brought to life, and a 2-dimensional image doesn't do it justice, so therefore let's not dwell on this image, ladies and gentlemen. What you do need to know is that from Hell Corner at the lowest point of the circuit to the skyline run at turn 11 is the best part of 174 metres of elevation change. It truly is the rise up a mountain. But in terms of a quick reminder of our rules, before we go racing, drivers are running a fixed setup. It is the iRacing fixed setup with fuel loads restricted to 42% for each and every race session. An open qualifying format shall be used, which means all drivers are out on the circuit. They have visibility of each other out there, and therefore they need to do their best not to impede each other, but they can try and sneak the slipstream off each other. When we do go racing, the race shall commence via a double-file rolling start as an edition of the SRM GT4 challenge, and there are no mandatory pit stop requirements. You choose when to pit and when the fuel tank says you need to pit, and each driver has one fast pair available should they need it. A driver shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 18 or more instant points. If they get to 25, they will be disqualified, and all race journeys shall be conducted post-race. But with haste, we make our way back to circuit side, ladies and gentlemen, because the sun is getting ready to come up, and while drivers out there right now getting their initial outlaps together, and we do have a grand total today. I do believe 19 drivers have made the trip down under to Australia, as we do look to your winner from last time out, and the Paddock Motorsport Fury Sport driver of Daniel Perry making his way onwards, and knowing he's got a bit of an uphill battle today. But as he heads on down, well, what about this circuit and what exactly can we expect? Well, as we did mention earlier on, this is definitely one of those circuits where overtaking is restricted to the long straights that take drivers to and from the mountain. Overtaking on the mountain, it is theoretically possible in a GT4. There is enough space to go too wide at most of the quarters, but do you really want to do it? The answer is no. You're going to have a lot of commitment to try and do that, and you need to have a lot of trust with your fellow driver you're going side by side with. So therefore, expect the overtakes to occur on the straight, and particularly on the opening corner and the final corner as well, but there is always a fault there. If someone goes slow over the mountain, there may be a chance. We also do have a temporary raw effect, which we didn't show you on the previous slide, which is we are mandating a tow zone today over the mountain, particularly on the opening laps 1 and 2, whereby if a driver finds himself in an instant, which means their car is pointing in the wrong direction and they cannot quickly recover it or get it off the racing line, if it is on the racing line, they are expected to tow immediately in the race if they get it wrong on the mountain. So anywhere effective between turn 2, so what will be Griffin's Bend, which we'll see very shortly, as we do see Matthias Pensler amongst many make the way up to, from turn number 2 all the way to the exit of Forestdale, but turn number 19, the kink that leads onto the Conrod Straight. If somebody gets it wrong and they can't get the car corrected immediately, they are expected to tow, because if it does trigger a secondary incident, i.e. they collect other drivers who have got nowhere to go, well, understandably, there might be a few words on the stewards, and the driver may be hit with the stewarding book from Sim Racing magazine. And well, it's no joke, ladies and gentlemen, I picked it up the other day, I blew off all the dust, it really needs to be broken out, and well, it is not a light book, it's the best part of 2 kilograms. I don't know what they put in there, it's meant to be made out of paper, but I swear they've made it out of metal. But meanwhile, who's going to have the most metal here to be able to take on this circuit? Matthias Pensler looking quite quick at the moment, as the headlights are still on on full beam. And we do say hello there to none other than Adri Backhand, who says, come on Fury Sim Sport. And well, good evening to you, good sir. I hope you're doing well. And well, speaking of our Fury Sim Sport drivers, well, we do look to none other than Stuart Reynolds, the defending champion in the #1 car, of course. And well, in his own words, last time out, VIR definitely a bit of a race of survival, and we're just hoping today that you can have a much more positive day here at the Bathurst circuit, and definitely a bit frustrating one at VIR. Understandable when you're the defending champion. Indeed, you've had 2 wins on the bounce, and suddenly the wet weather conditions at VIR completely robbed him of the ability to make it a hat-trick, but can he return to winning ways today? That will be the plan, as he does follow his teammate along there, and I believe that's Matthias Tem. And I think they've decided to go to a to-me-to-you strategy, whereby one car's going to act as the pace car, the other car will be following it. Oh, and that was a little bit of a moment there where Tim had to back off quite early coming into the chase. And well, Stuart Reynolds in the end picking up a huge amount of a draft. We will get on board one of our drivers shortly to give you an idea of what it's like to deliver a lap around Bathurst. I think we'll get one on board whilst we have got some night time left, already the early hours of the morning, should we say, because it's a very different character at night compared to what it's like during the day, or at least when there's some sunshine. But as Reynolds sets his benchmark at 2:11.549, well, that is 2 tenths faster than anybody else, but Matthias Pentelar in his Ford Mustang, it goes into second there, the best part of 1.3 seconds behind, but more lap times being found. And there we can see the satellite racing machine and Niels Core, a whole 1.1 seconds off Reynolds, and finding some time, but also finding a Porsche in front of him, and that is why the Sim Racing magazine and Porsches, I believe that's the car of Paul Goffin he's found, and Goffin right now just carrying on, minding his own business, which he's allowed to be fair. This is qualifying, and overtaking in qualifying is not as straightforward as you look up the inside and make a move. It's not blue flag rules either. If you're on a qualifying lap and you're the lead car in the pack, you're allowed to hold your line. Everyone else behind, meanwhile, has got to either overtake you without impeding you, or alternatively, they've got to figure out and back off. Indeed, it's hard to do as a driver, but sometimes you do have to give yourself a bit more space than you would in a race. From them, well, we do see what is a few more laps going together, including Rob Sharp sets his initial benchmark at 2:14, 2:14.44 to nearest 100, full fastest in the AM class at the moment. And well, expect him to be prioritising consistency, and consistency can be very valuable here at Bathurst. And indeed, there's 3 main trifecta that you need to do well here. Firstly, you need 1 lap pace, because if you can put yourself on pole, you are guaranteed to have a strategic advantage going into the race, so long as you can hold on to that lead come the exit at turn number 2, the corner just there at Griffin's Bend. And indeed, by the time you get to the cutting here at turns 3 and 4 in that open lap. The second part, you need to be consistent. Being good over a single lap around Bathurst is great, but being able to be consistent and not make any mistakes over the course of 60 minutes of racing can be just as invaluable, because you see there's plenty of walls around this circuit, and even when we're not on the mountain, the walls are never too far away for our drivers, and one knock to the wall and your race could all be in arrears. And the third thing is, you will need to be smart on strategy. You need to make sure you're doing some fuel saving out there. Alternatively, you can find a way to undercut or overcut your rivals when you're equal in fuel, and be able to bang in some very strong laps on your out laps as well, but then that goes against the consistency. But it really is that trio of items which are going to be key to success. We'll have to see who exactly is going to find the perfect trio, because overtaking is definitely going to be very challenging. As we get ready to head into the second half of qualifying very shortly, well, we're going to jump on board for a flying lap, and it's going to be today brought to you by none other than the Dr. Dabber sponsored satellite racing machine, Ben Idris Abdullahi, as he makes his way down towards the final corner of Murray's Bend. We jump on board, and he now takes us around for a flying lap of the Mount Panorama Circuit, more commonly known as Bathurst. Making his way out to the final corner, heading down towards turn 1, looking to his right hand side, and it will be that 50-metre board. He just brakes before it, about 75 metres, and down to the second gear. On the throttle as he clears the apex, and now flat out, 6.3 litres of V8 machinery, naturally aspirated from Germany, giving way as they make the way all the way up towards turn number 2. Here he can breathe for a little bit up the mountain straight. He's got to get himself mentally prepared for what's ahead, and really they do this in their sleep, and they need to with so little visibility. Looks to his left hand side as he brakes the 100-metre board and comes in towards Griffin's Bend. Here nice and tight, and you want to get the throttle on nice and early, you've got plenty of road camber to abuse. Does that and lets the car roll out, as he now brings it over to the right to open up the cutting. A left followed by a very sharp left through 3 and in towards 4. On the brakes on the exit of 3, straight line the steering wheel, and then chuck the car into the corner, holding second gear. And now up in the third as he comes up through Quarry. Turn number 5 and turn number 6. And as he comes to the right-hander, don't clip the apex curve because it'll send you to the wall. But instead, just keep it nice and straight as you exit 6 to go past 7. And now into the triple left of 8, 9 and 10. Turn number 9 here in particular, lift off the throttle, just take it easy. And now off the throttle once again into McPhillamy Park at turn number 10. And on the throttle as you join the dots up at the apex, and it'll make sure you get enough corner speed. Now over Skyline, the highest point of the circuit, looking to where the sun will rise, and going all the way down through into the dipper here at turn number 14, left into right, back on the throttle immediately here. You need to keep that throttle planted wherever possible to settle the car down, and braking it on the exit at turn number 17 and in towards Forest Elbow. Nice and tight on entry there, decides to take a tighter line to make sure he hits the apex, but of course he's got to be ready for understeer by being so aggressive, but he just he nailing that run, and now down at the back straight he comes, out to 19 and on to Conrad, and here it's full throttle. Now keeping in mind he doesn't really have a toe to work with at the moment, he does have a distance differ, a slipstream from the car in front, but otherwise it is primarily his own volition, and right now with what the Mercedes is able to do, he's hitting, coming in towards the chase, 166 miles an hour as he goes onto the brakes there for turn 21. Keep that in mind, because when he has got a draft he'll be pushing upwards of 170 miles an hour given how long that straight is, but clears the chicane very nicely, medium speed chicane in third gear, and now down towards Murray's Bend. Onto the brakes he goes, about 80 metres from corner apex, downhill braking zone there. You've got to be careful not to understeer, but he just he nails it. And he comes to the time line. Well, is it going to be an improvement? Yes, it is. It's a lovely lap there, and well, he goes to fifth for 2 minute 12.470. Still the best part of 9 tenths off of the overall pole time set by Stuart Reynolds, but that was a smooth lap from our 269 driver, and we love seeing that. We'd love to see even more of that from him as his qualifying session heads towards its final third. But whilst it may not be too close at the top right now, Stuart Reynolds seems to be on a planet of his own with regards to his pace in qualifying, indeed doing what Daniel Perry was able to do in the wet at VIR last time out. Well, meanwhile in the AM class it is excruciatingly tight, and right now it's not your normal suspects. Stephen Codman is currently your provisional pole sitter, but only by the best part there of 400ths over Lee Berridge, and well, it's been some time since we've seen the boosted motorsport car all the way out towards the very front in the qualifying session in the AMs, but Berridge right now finding some pace in the only BMW to make its way to Australia, and well, this M4 Evo cars, the sparks fly there from grazing the barrier. Not an easy one to get to grips with, and particularly for this downhill section of the mountain, it's going to feel very loose on the rear end, but given how flexible it is on that rear end, it may be its advantage here, in the fact it's got so much rotation built into it. And Berridge looking good, but in the draft here of the car, I do believe that's none other than Daniel Perry he slipstream offers. He goes a little bit sideways there coming out of Forest Elbow. I wonder if Berridge could be on for a huge lap, and we're going to bring up your dashboard here. Oh, unfortunately, I thought Perry was going to carry him a little bit further along the straight, ladies and gentlemen, so he wasn't, but you can see Berridge coming towards what is the rise there, going under the Fuso board, and as he does so, well, that's going to put him to 160 miles an hour already, not quite on the pace of the Mercedes, missing about 1 to 2 miles an hour at most there, but still very close. And indeed the Mercedes, the BMW and the Ford Mustang, all very quick cars on the straights. They are expected to be the cars to beat here today, and well, we're seeing that in the fact the Porsche and the McLaren meanwhile not quite on the pace of those that are here. But Berridge right now looking good, and Mark Johnson meanwhile only a further 200ths behind their 30 Ram drives in the Aston Martin V8 Vantage. A bit of an oddity car this one, in the fact it doesn't have the best straight line speed, but it does have some very good acceleration, and that could go very well for this car, particularly over the mountain. Also the fact it's got a lot of torque in its lower gears, which means you can actually run a higher gear to save some fuel, but also to save on wheel spin over the mountain, so therefore it could be quite formidable here today. But Johnson right now just hoping he piece it together. Hopefully we get to see the first double podium of the season for Track Mouse Racing, and given the way that things have gone so wrong so many times, but then again we've got to wait to see. We've got a long way to go before we do get to that checkered flag. Indeed, we're not even in the race at the moment. We're in qualifying, and Johnson right now seeing if he can find a bit more time as we do see him come to that timeline. What's it going to be? And well, he jumps to provisional pole. It's a 2 minute 12.729. Stephen Codman does not find time there, as Codman just behind him, so the two teammates trying to work together, and Codman right now be grateful to be able to follow his teammates. He'll be wondering, what exactly has he done that I haven't? And well, the answer is he somehow managed to find 3.5 tenths over him. That's quite a staggering advantage, as Rob Sharp improves to a 2 minute 13.437, but it still is the best part of 3 tenths of a Lee Berridge. So I think the Porsche is now starting to hit its limit in the hands of Sharp in terms of how much one lap pace it does have. Heading onwards, we're yet to set a time on the board. Heinz Mayer, and the same for Jules Gardner. Neither driver has got a lap on the board as of yet, although I do wonder whether Gardner's potentially planning to start from the back of the grid and work his way forward, which isn't always a bad thing. And indeed, we heard from Rob Sharp last time out the fact he was actually grateful to have started so far back at VIR, because it meant he could see most of the corners on the open lap where others could not because of the spray. Although we have no spray here today, today, although going to be hoping by starting from the back, if anything should happen towards the front of the field, he's not going to get involved in it. But Heinz Mann, meanwhile, still pushing for a lap, although he's been able to get some fuel out of the car, so he's on an out lap. He'll have one more lap. After this one, it'll be his only lap, which he might be able to qualify with. And I wonder whether he's had a few brushes with the wall. Well, as he heads onwards, I can definitely tell you, looking back at the data we've had of qualifying times, the answer to that question is that yes, Mayer, particularly on his third lap, did have quite a significant brush with a barrier, and also went off track. But as he comes on down, well, meanwhile, we do look back to your overall pole sitter of Stuart Reynolds. Back it off there as he gets ready to go on to one final lap. Oh, this is getting a little bit cheeky between him and the sister team of Paddock Motorsport, and that is Daniel Perry tucking in behind. And well, I think in the end, Reynolds is going to give him the tow, but that was building up a little bit of a traffic jam there coming down in towards Murray's Bend, although they'll get away with it just about. No shenanigans like in Formula 1 that you'd see at Monza. Well, indeed, as we do see these drivers make their way onwards, I think in the end, the idea was to try and give Perry the tow, and Reynolds making sure he was there before he really went onto lap, but leaving it as late as possible. And well, thankfully, everyone able to work around it. Just behind him is Chris Jennings, and currently the last place of your pro drivers, 8th in class length overall. He's right now trying to find a bit more time out there to get ahead of Berridge and Codman, who are only a 10th ahead of him at the moment. So it's quite tight between them. And Chris Jennings in a little bit of an awkward position at the moment in terms of pace this season. In fact, he's been always towards the top end of the AMs, but he's not quite been able to touch what is the top 5 of the pros. He's been in this no man's land, and some would say, well, why is he not in AM perhaps? Well, the problem with it is, of course, when you do have the intersection of the classes, you're always going to have one or two drivers who just find themselves in a slightly difficult place. As meanwhile, Rob Sharp's had a bit of a crazy start to his lap. I believe he's had a bit of an off track coming out the final corner. He's got away with that, and he makes his way onwards. At least that's what we're hearing. And I think Stuart Reynolds has come into the pit lane. I'm not quite sure what's happened to Reynolds, but he has towed. And well, these drivers right now definitely getting right towards the most critical end part of this qualifying session as the clock strikes 0. But who now is going to put the best possible lap together all the way at the very end? Well, we will find out very shortly. But just before we do, we're going to take a look back at what exactly happened to Stuart Reynolds very quickly. So this, something had already gone wrong in front. Oh my goodness, and that was the car of Lee Berridge that ended up in the barrier. Now, we can't tell you what exactly happened to Berridge, but Reynolds had to take evasive action, and the whole field did, and behind, that was one of the satellite racing cars being caught out there. So, a mistake for Lee Berridge, and suddenly, it all fell apart like a pack of cards there for several cars. But meanwhile, back to your live pictures we come as Ryan Penny, he goes, that's going to be a bit of a knock to the barrier there, but he has improved, and in fact, he does so. I think that might be a bit of a glitch in our time tower to show that lap. It's 2:15.1, but he said it much earlier than that. Indeed, all these drivers coming around right now, and Benny just Abdullahi making his way towards the timeline very shortly, coming in towards Murray's Bend, and as he does so, well, he's currently 5th fastest, but I suspect this lap is not going to be an improvement based on his sector times. Nothing's gone green so far. Indeed, he's had no personal best over this lap, so he's going to have a miracle final sector at that, and the answer is no, he will not. Mark Johnson, meanwhile, he's still got a way to go, as Ian Anderson swipes back at Rob Sharp for 4th place in AM and takes 12th back there on a 2:13.213. And well, we're still waiting for Mark Johnson to come on through. In fact, he decides to go to the pit lane. He's got the job done. Stephen Codman, damaged car's going nowhere. Paul Goffin, meanwhile, he's been able to improve to a personal best of 2:14.48, but does not find any more time out there. And we are just waiting on, I believe, Rob Sharp, who decides, nope, he's coming into the pit lane. He's not improving. And Paul Goffin's parked up. Martin Rendell, meanwhile, well, the man who definitely kept Rob Sharp honest towards the end at VIR. Can he keep him honest today? Well, to do so, he needs to find a whole 1.3 seconds. And the answer to that is going to be, he does not quite find 1.3 seconds. He finds 7/10 of a second. It's a 2:14.112. So he does qualify behind Sharp thereabouts. But cars parked up in the pit lane, qualifying is complete, and Stuart Reynolds returns to pole position here today on a 2:11.549, 3/10 ahead of Matthias Bentelar, and a further 3/10 to Niels Core. But it is a Mercedes on pole, 2 Ford Mustangs following it, and then another Mercedes, and Matthias Stem starting 4th place, and Bennett just after that. He keeps the focus on power there, starting in 5th. Meanwhile, starting 7th will be your AM pole sitter Mark Johnson in an Aston Martin, and surely at the 4th time of trying, it's got to come together for Mark Johnson, Track Mouse Racing today, and well, it will be an all Track Mouse Racing and Front Row, interspersed by Daniel Perry in 8th place, because Stephen Codman will line up 9th for the team in his Ford Mustang, and it will be Lee Berrish just missing out behind by 400, starting 3rd in class, 10th overall in a very close qualifying session there to be inside the top 10. And also a big shout out there to Ian Anderson for taking 4th in AM at the last notice and making it sure it was 2 tenths ahead of Rob Sharp. So I think we've got a little bit of a pressure cooker race today, and meanwhile Jules Gardner and Heinz Mann not setting laps, so that's a bit of a noticeable factor there. And well, perhaps they'll be grateful to start from the back. We'll have to wait and see. We are missing a few dry and stays. We mentioned earlier we've only had 19 drivers make the way to Australia, and along the way we have missed today Gary Toole in the AM class, who couldn't make this round due to work commitments. The same for Andy Chell in the AM class. Unfortunate for both of them, but we hope they're having a good day at work, or if not, it's passing smoothly. Also, Andy Marsden unfortunately couldn't make this round, and we won't see him in too many more rounds this season, although I think we will see him in round number 5 next time out, and perhaps the season finale. And also, unfortunately, John Roberts not making it onto the grid today as well, and well, he's been feeling quite sickly. He's actually picked up food poisoning from what I hear. So John, if you are tuning in right now, we do hope you feel better soon, because the last thing you want is food poisoning. That's not nice. And well, I was going to say, if we did see John Roberts on the grid today, if any of you are a big 24 Hours of Le Mans fan, would John Roberts be doing his best Johnny Herbert impersonation? Because of course, if many of you may remember, the last ever victory in the Group C category before it was outlawed after 1991, if I remember correctly, when the regulations were transitioning, was done by the Mazda 787B, the Mazda Speed Machine, and Johnny Herbert was one of the 3 drivers who in the end could not be on the podium because he had food poisoning and was very sick as the celebrations were going on. He essentially had done a double stint to complete the race, given the fact the team did not want to risk having any issues in the pit lane. And well, the man who was absolutely feeling terrible on the day in a car that was overheating constantly in the cockpit, in terms of it had very poor heat dispersion inside the cockpit, the Mazda 787B, and Johnny Herbert in the end literally finished the race and was incredibly unwell whilst his teammates were celebrating, albeit not with glee in some respect, in fact they were missing him, but were celebrating the victory. And meanwhile he was being seen to by doctors. Well, that does seem as though John Roberts is not doing that today, and will fair play to him prioritising his health rather than going racing, and that's definitely the right call, John. And the Boosted Motorsport driver in the AM class definitely missed, but doing the right thing for his health. But with 3.5 minutes left to go before we do head to the grid, we are now in the warm-up session, and we do see D28-100 saying the Porsche doesn't even have the power to pull the skin off of a rice pudding. And well, that's got to be one of the best similes or analogies I've ever read, and I do believe that might be none other than Daniel Perry who's posted that in the YouTube chat. And if so, Dan, I can tell you one thing, you've honestly made me have the biggest Cheshire Cat grin. I mean, I'm already grinning because it's Tuesday evening and it's the Sim Racing Magazine GT4 Challenge. I absolutely love commentating the series, but to read that, honestly, I'm not grinning in joy for you, because I do feel sorry for you in the fact the Porsche does not seem to have the power today, but that's the way the balance of performance does go. It gives and takes, but it's just an absolutely brilliant analogy there, and that's definitely one way to vent it rather than saying we've got no power. But meanwhile, as Stephen Codman makes his way on around, well, power to him for 2nd place in the AM class in qualifying, but can him and his teammate Mark Johnson make that 1-2 happen? They've had 3 attempts at it so far, although you could say really 2. VIR was a bit of a different round by comparison with regards to their qualifying performances, but definitely our season opener all the way back at what was the wonderful circuit of Imola on the 3rd of March, and also we did get to see them, of course, put everything on the line at Long Beach, but unfortunately it all went wrong there with some late braking into turn 1, definitely cost a few drivers, including them. But it's good to see you there, Dan, and well, hope you're all set to go racing in the pit lane at the moment, and indeed we're all set. And for those of you tuning in, if you're not racing, or even if you are racing, of course we are in a comfort break moment at the moment, so therefore if you haven't got yourself some liquid refreshment, go do so. I'm going to take my own advice and take a big gulp of water very shortly, and if you do need to get some snacks, get some popcorn there, or alternatively a packet of wine gums, or whatever you fancy, definitely go do it now, because you won't have time when we do go green flag racing. So I get the feeling the racing action is going to be absolutely eye-watering. Well, own advice adhered to, even though I've spilt half of it all down myself here in the content booth, although we don't have any camera to show you that. Indeed, taking too big of a gulp perhaps there. As we do see Guy Edwards making his way around with the 6-turn Motorsport McLaren. Not quite exceptional in qualifying, although to be fair, able to get onto the tail end of the power cars inside the top 10, and therefore he'll be hoping perhaps he can siphon some slipstream off. And that's the one thing you do have to do when you're in a car that's a bit down on power, if you can. You try and hang on to the back of the faster cars, and you won't be able to make any moves on them, but you need to try and stay in the train. And if you can, well, the downsides, of course, will be the fact that you won't be able to save fuel because you're constantly having to use the power plus the slipstream to equalise, but you may just be able to stay with them. And should they get it wrong, well, you can always put them under a little bit more pressure, perhaps, later on in the race. Everyone right now trying to get the practice in, as we can definitely see the ambient light is coming up here, and sunrise is almost with us now. And well, that's absolutely brilliant because we definitely want the sun to be up, and we do get 60 minutes of race action underway here in round number 4 of the championship. And indeed, it's all swings and roundabouts, it would seem, in the overall Drivers' Championship. Although for Stuart Reynolds, it definitely has swung back in his direction with that brilliant pole lap, but now he's got to convert it into a win and make it his 3rd win in 4 rounds. But can he do so? And meanwhile, in the AM class, will we see the stranglehold of Porsche victories be broken today, or will Paul Goffin make it another one? Or can we see Rob Sharp potentially make it his 3rd win? Well, for all that and more, ladies and gentlemen, it's about time to find out, because it's time to make our way to the grid for round number 4 of the championship here at the Mount Panorama Circuit in Australia. And so as our drivers make the way to the grid, this held our lineup for our one and only race down under in Bathurst. And as we can see, on pole position, it's Stuart Reynolds for Fury Simsport, taking pole in the end by 3 tenths over RD Simsport's Matthias Pentelar. It's Mercedes on the left, it's going to be Ford on the right, and from the 2 power cars, it'll then be another Ford just behind on the night. 3 tenths adrift, and Niels Corder for Satellite Racing. He'll be joined on the 2nd row of the grid by the Dutchman of Matthias 10, the Fury Simsport driver, trying to take on the German. The gap between the 2 of them in qualifying 700. It was then a further 2 tenths back to Ben Idris Abdullahi in his Mercedes AMG, and the Frenchman not quite on the pace of the top 4, but was able to outpace by the best part there of 2 tenths Guy Edwards of 6-7 Motorsport, who in the end delivered a good lap in his McLaren, but now battling uphill in a car that didn't quite have the power. Mark Johnson starts in 7th there, and pole sitter for Track Mouse Racing is Aston Martin V8 Advantage, a very impressive lap, and he was ahead of Daniel Perry for Paddock Motorsport by only 100th. However, it was then a further almost 4 tenths back to Stephen Codman, 2nd of Yam drives of Track Mouse Racing, head of Lee Berridge of Boosted Motorsport, starting 10th there, 3rd in AM with one of his best qualifying performances of the season so far. Starting in 11th place, it's going to be Chris Jennings, the last year pro driver for Axis Simsports, ahead of Ian Anderson for See You Next Tuesday, and the Scotsman there delivering ahead of Rob Sharp for Burris Racing, and Martin Arendel, who joins him on that 7th row. Expect them to go toe-to-toe once again. Paul Goffin for SRM starts 15th, ahead of Ryan Penny for Oris Racing, and it's Rome Worthy's Ollie Carradine, 17th on the grid, ahead of Jules Garner for Sim Racing Magazine, who did not set a lap time, nor did Heinz Mayer for Rome Worthy, and that is how our 19 drivers will start this race. They're all there, all primed and ready to go, and already this formation lap is underway. It's a short one, ladies and gentlemen, as they make the way through the chase chicane, and well, we can definitely see it's a little bit misty out there, and the sun is gradually coming up. Things are slightly getting tinged with a sepia tone. It's getting browner and browner, but don't worry, it's not your TV screen, that's the sun coming, and it's about to dawn, because it's time for Stuart Reynolds to get this race underway. As he makes his way out of the final quarter, it's go, go, go. As 60 minutes of race, it means to tick away. Stuart Reynolds gets the screen, and Matthias Pentelar immediately with him there side by side. The Ford Mustang driver looking for a move around the outside through Hell Corner. But will he be able to have a heavenly approach here? Well, it doesn't look so at the moment as the whole field comes on through. We can see up there Lee Berridge had a monster start in the AM class. In fact, he's already into lead of the AM class. I'm not quite sure how exactly he's timed it, but Berridge is absolutely flying there as this BMW moves forward. So quick on the accelerational gains. And right now, Mark Johnson and Stephen Codman trying to come back at him, but meanwhile at the front, as Pentelar on the inside of Reynolds in. This could be a change for lead as the headlights go off. The sun's definitely rising enough now, and Matthias Pentelar takes the lead there in towards Griffin's Bend. Well, I didn't expect that to happen so early, and Reynolds and Tem tucking behind, but this might all be part of strategy, because they're all coming towards the cut-in for the first time, asking now everyone will go single file as best they can, although Lee Berridge, once more, he's taking on Daniel Perry, and Perry right now is giving him the cold shoulder and saying, no, go away. And right now, Lee Berridge is not taking no for an answer as they head over in towards Quarry and up towards McPhillamy Park. But what a start there from Lee Berridge. 2 places gained as quick as that, and critically in the AM class, both of them. But meanwhile, Matthias Tem, he's had a poor run through turn 9 because that's Niels Core looking up his inside and decides to back off quite smartly there coming from McPhillamy Park. I think if he'd gone for that there, we could have some tears before we've even got 1 lap down. But coming over Skyline now, and meanwhile, we can see Guy Edwards on the back of this group, Daniel Perry with him. And that's exactly what Edwards and Perry now need to do. They need to work together here in order to make sure they don't annoy one another and stay with each other and core and use them to pull them further up into the podium fight. If they can do that, they may just be able to salvage the big points out of the night. If not, how they could be coming for a bruising. But further back, we see Ollie Carbadine. He's had a decent start. On the back of Paul Goffin, who's had a bit of a poor start by comparison behind Ryan Penny now. And Penny making some early ground as Heinz Mayer's a little bit further behind. And then we do have Jules Gardner 1 second adrift. But everyone is saved over the mountain the first time round, which is absolutely brilliant to see. And right now, Pentelar keeping Reynolds at bay. But I wonder if Stuart Reynolds has decided, right, if you want the lead, fine, you can have it. I'll just stay behind you and make sure you're not able to break away. As Matthias Tem a whole second back at the man as Nils Kaur and Idris Abdullahi for company. You can see the satellite racing cars there in the rear of the picture, chasing after the second of the Fury Supersport cars. Going on after one lap, it's Matthias Pentelar who leads ahead of Stuart Reynolds, followed by Matthias Tem. A gap there between second and third, growing to a second, with Nils Kaur in fourth, ahead of teammate Ben Idris Abdullahi for satellite racing. Got Edwards for 6-7 Motorsport is sixth, ahead of Daniel Perry. For Paddock Motorsport, who completes your top 7 all-pro drivers. The Intro Am leader, Lee Berridge in 8th place, at Mark Johnson and Stephen Codman. The Trackmaster Racing driver still chasing the boosted Motorsport car, and that is your top 10 with Ian Anderson in 11th, best of the rest. 4th in the Am class. He's got some pressure from Chris Jennings here, and Jennings finding a little bit more pace as this race is starting to develop. I think he's realising we might be able to gain that Ford Mustang a little bit quick on the straights by default, plus the tow, and Jennings moves into 11th place there, so leading behind the Newbridge Racing inspired livery machine, and now heading up towards what will be turn 3 and 4, and Jennings there making it an easy move, but Anderson being quite obliging. Martin Rendell and Rob Sharp, they complete the run through to 6th place in the Am class, with the two heroes lost about at VR and Am fight each other already, but it's Rendell gaining up hand on Sharp, so a bit of a change there. But further back, Ryan Penny now 3 seconds back off of them, and bring Goffin and Carwadine along for the ride, with Heinz Mayer trying to latch onto the back. You see we're starting to spread the field a little bit here as we're getting into individual packs. But back to the front, coming down for a skyline this time. Pentelar and Reynolds together, and then we see Tem under a little bit of pressure as we look back from the rear of the third place car, and Core here very close. Now the concertina effect, always a big factor over the mountain. You will see cars get a bit closer than they would seem. As hold up a second, we need to take a look back at what's happened. There's Guy Edwards. Oh, goodness me, that's pointing in the wrong direction. And Edwards right now trying to get to the escape road to get it out of the way. And I suspect, given the fact he was able to get the car so clear, he is going to try and get it turned around. So he does so safely, and well, that's not going to be easy. He's going to need to take some time to do that. But Edwards right now definitely in a bit of a hard place. But meanwhile, as we'll get a replay of what happened to him very shortly. Oh, Tem under pressure from Core, and is Core going to go for the move? He thinks about it, but Tem goes defensive. Well, we were saying the fact that Tem did look pressured over the mountain, and well, goes very deep there, as in fact Nils Core taps on the rear and does damage the front bumper of the car a little bit. And Ben Idris Abdullahi queuing up behind. So therefore, the satellite racing cars right now, they've got a little bit more pace compared to Tem, who's still trying to settle down into this race. And I wonder if they're losing time right now by being stuck behind him. Daniel Perry has been dropped. Now, I do believe he was behind the machine of Guy Edwards when it all went wrong, so he probably had to back off there to avoid being added to the incident. So that's not helped him whatsoever. So he'll be hoping that the fight for third, fourth and fifth will grow, so that way he can get back onto the back of it. Otherwise, his race right now may have come to a stump. But meanwhile, Lee Berridge there stumping himself, running a bit too wide at Hell Corner, and almost heading towards the tree, which the corner is known for. As they make the way onwards, a story about that very shortly. Here comes Mark Johnson. And Johnson's not going to waste any time here as he drags races his past what is Lee Berridge's car. And Mark Johnson now up into lead of the AM class. Is Berridge going to let it go? Yes, he is this time. And Stephen Codman just sits behind. So therefore now it is the Track Mouse sandwich with Lee Berridge being the filling in the midst of it. And Chris Jennings catching little by little on to the groove. Matthias Pentelar still ahead of Stuart Reynolds, getting now down to 2 tenths as they make the way through quarry. So therefore Reynolds now starting to get an itch to scratch, and that itch is simply that he wants to try and make a move as we ride on board with your number 1 car. Now, of course, this is by no means easy as he makes his way over the rise and rank, going through that left-hander of turn number 10. Well, now, with the sun all over the car, what he's got to think about is just simply trying to stay with him for Fury Simsport, and we'll see if he can perhaps save some fuel over the race distance and then make a bit of a move later on. Not going to be easy, but there's always an art to it, and that's what he's going to be preying on, is the fact that a bit of fuel saving will come in handy. Nils Core 3 seconds back, well, after clearing Matthias Tem. In fact, that's happened off camera as they make the one around. Well, right now, it's definitely Tem who's lost out a little bit, and Idris Abdullahi, he'll be hoping he can get involved. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a quick look back in time at some of the big moments from your opening laps, including, of course, the race start. Now, this is when we did go green flag racing, and Matthias Pentelar's race start really one to be remembered here, because when green, well, that Ford Mustang had so much speed as they went up to the gears. we could see the fact that whilst initially Reynolds was heading towards turn 1, on a tight entry line and cold tyres, Pentelar there risking it all, but it was the right move to make as he looked around the outside, and it became a drag race here, and Pentelar naturally had about 2 to 3 miles an hour advantage in the acceleration stakes before the Mustang was able to get into 5th gear, which is really strong compared to the Mercedes 5th gear, and also 6th, it's a little bit stronger, and that's how he got to the inside. But well done to everyone, because it really was 2 by 2 before they got towards turn number 2, and then we also did see what was Nils caught on the outside, then Matthias Stem squeezing up the inside and taking the place off of him initially. But then it only took 2 laps before we did see one driver fall down the mountain, and this was for Guy Edwards, and this is where it went wrong for the 6M Motorsport driver, coming out of Skyline in towards the dipper through 12 okay, through 13 all right, and in towards turn number 14. Oh, could it be the rear of the car just completely let go there? Can we get the on board from Daniel Perry in that? I think we might be able to. This is what it looked like from Perry, so let's just watch and listen. And the rear of the car just bounced around, and Perry doing very well there to react. He saw the door was going to open on the right, so he kept the throttle in, backed off slightly when he got a bit closer, and then just waited for the rear of what is Edwards' car to spin away, and that's how he was able to squeeze on through. Now, meanwhile, we did have this, of course, from Nils Court, only what was a moments ago on lap number 3, and this was the Satellite Racing driver taking the 3rd place of Matthias Tem, and it was up the inside he went, the Satellite Racing car. Tem on the outside, they didn't really offer too much of a battle, just wanted to try and hold it around the outside, but in the end, it was Court who just snatched that off of him and kept it cool, calm and collected. That's exactly what he needed to do. But with that, we go back to live racing. As we do, well, one of the big stories, of course, was the fact that we did have a mistake from Lee Berridge that we saw on camera that gave the lead to Mark Johnson. But as our 2 overall leaders continue to push onwards, well, these 2 still nose to tail together. No real change here. 3 tenths of the gap at most at the moment, and Reynolds definitely in a fuel-saving mode at this point. He doesn't really need to be trying to make a move, given the fact that we are expecting 2 pit stops today as a minimum. Given these races are only 2-stop strategy races with a 42% fuel tank. That fuel tank being raised from the start of the season, given the unbalance it provided to the Aston Martin, and particularly it put the Aston Martin at a great disadvantage, as was discovered at Imola, whereby the car in the end required so much fuel saving it was either a 3-stop, you have to drive a very far way off of the pace required for a 2-stop for every other car. Now, balance of performance is of course one thing, and we do reserve the right here at Sim Racing Magazine to slightly tweak the balance of performance that you do see in the iRacing official GT4 series, and that's where the fuel tanks were slightly increased to help the Aston Martin out just be able to feel a lot more comfortable on the 2-stop strategy, which always provides plenty of variety, and that's before the weather is introduced, of course, which we saw at VIR, and we will see it come back later on this season. But right now, leader Johnson trying to pull away, and Berridge, in fact, falling back a little bit. Now, Johnson's last lap was a very impressive 2-minute 13.42. Berridge, by comparison, set a personal best at 2-minute 14.14. So I wonder whether, as he makes his way on around, Lee Berridge right now might be backing off a little bit here. Alternatively, whether Johnson has decided to go all in to try and break away and open up a bit of a gap. As we do say hello to Can't Frag there in the YouTube chat, who says Nils gave Matthias rear damage with that, and I do believe that was the swap around of places, an unfortunate bit of damage to the bumper there of Nils Court's car, as we do look to him making his way away, and Matthias Tem, meanwhile, does seem to have a little bit of damage on his own car there. Really appreciate the insight, and if any of you do have any insights that you can pass on to us here in the commentary booth, we're always grateful, so do let us know in the YouTube chat. Don't be shy, feel free to say hi as well. Indeed, the only biting you'll see here today will be on the brakes. But coming back to your leaders, Pentelar and Reynolds still pushing away at the moment, and Reynolds letting that gap open up a little bit more. Further down the order, we've still got plenty of fighting going on. Guy Edwards, of course, now on a bit of recovery drive. He has found his way past Jules Gardner only moments ago. He's now up into 18th place, and how far can he go over the course of the day? That's going to be a question. Remember, of course, your pro drivers, they only compete in the overall championship, so every place for them is a points-paying position. Even versus the AMs, they need to beat the AMs as much as they need to beat their fellow pros. Meanwhile, in the AM class, you have the overall championship, which they'll be fighting for some points, clutch points here, the likes of Ryan Penny and Paul Goffin. Only a couple of points they'll take for these places, being down in 14th and 15th respectively. But of course, they'll also be battling for AM points, and that'll be their class finishing positions which dictate that. As Penny keeps Goffin at bay, Ollie Carwadine in a distant view there. And right now it does seem as though the roam-worthy Mercedes machines are doing things right as they come through. And Goffin right now finds himself really being double-teamed here. And what does the Sim Racing Magazine driver do at this point? Because understandably, he needs to stay with Penny, so he's got to use a lot of fuel to stay in the draft. And the problem is, behind him, Ollie Carbadine is just able to stay well within tow distance. And well, here we're getting the double draft off the back of Goffin's car and also Carbadine's car. Well, off the back of Penny's car, I should say there. Otherwise, we're getting the draft of himself. And Ollie Carbadine, understandably, well, here he really will have a big opportunity to potentially leapfrog both drives over the course of the pit stops today. That could really be his ace in the hole, as Heinz Mayer is very gradually catching up to this group. He's now within 8 tenths, so it might have been a bit of a slow start to the day for Heinz, but he's finding some pace eventually. And well, it could just be the ticket here, and indeed if he gets to the head of this group, he'll be finishing 7th in the AM class today, which would be a good performance, some solid points to be taken home. From him, looking back all the way up to what is second place AM driver Lee Berridge. Well, Mark Johnson 2 seconds clear. Last lap, Johnson a 13.08, Berridge responded with a 13.56. So the tempo of the AM lead battle and the AM podium positions is rising quite rapidly. But the problem is that Berridge right now doesn't seem to have a response to Johnson. He had that lightning start, which really surprised everybody in the AM class. But Johnson right now, since taking that position back with Berridge's small mistake coming out to turn number 1 on lap 3, well, that really has been the differentiator at the moment. We'll have to wait and see what's to come. As you can see there, Johnson just a little bit sideways coming out to Forestdale, but it shows you he's pushing. And we're bearing in mind as well, the Aston Martin V8 Vantage, front engine, rear wheel drive, front mid-engine, however, so the engine is behind the front axle as much as possible to try and centralise the weight distribution, a very important part of this car. And indeed, you'll see that in a lot of Aston Martins and also their Jaguar equivalent, in the fact they do try to bring the engine as far back towards the driver in the front, because it means otherwise the rear of the car is exceptionally light. The rear wing tries to keep the rear of the car planted, because these road cars turned race cars don't have the huge amounts of downforce that you'll see on a GT3 by comparison, and that's really where the difference is. These cars are very light over that rear end. But as we do look to Matthias Penteler, on a 2-minute 12.251, setting the fastest lap of the race. Stuart Reynolds a 2-minute 12.40. So it doesn't quite match him at the moment, although Reynolds has previously set a 2-minute 12.26 to nearest 100, so close to Penteler's time, but Penteler trying to run away. The only problem is that Reynolds right now staying right there with him. Coming in towards turn number 2 again. Well, 50 minutes this race almost complete, and strategy will start to be a fault. We normally do see, when we have these 2-stop races in dry conditions, that the first pit window is around the 20-minute mark, with a little bit of differentiation around 18 to 25 minutes into the race, and then we have a bit of a wider second stop pit window, which is normally anywhere between 35 minutes into the race and 45 minutes into the race, and that comes down to further fuel saving there and what drivers have been able to achieve on the first pit stop. Everyone will be absolutely topping up the tanks. I do see their suggestion for actually backhand saying LMP3s will spice up things. Indeed, LMP3s normally mated with GT4s, and what has been a consideration for multi-class racing. Indeed, many of you may remember the 180 kilometres of Sebring, where we did have our GT4s met on circuit with Porsche 992.1 Cup cars, and it definitely added quite a bit of spice there, and we're always open to suggestions here at Sim Racing Magazine for what's next on schedule. But right now, staying in the present, well, Reynolds and Penteler are close, as Carbadine, meanwhile, getting a little bit close to Paul Goffin. We jump on board the front bumper, in fact looking down over the front bumper we should say, of the roadworthy car. We're taking a lot of apex curve there coming from McFinley Park. He's got to be so careful of that. The Mercedes can do it. We're not worried about that, but we are worried about the fact is if he hits that wall, the inside wall, the left-hand side of the car, he will be sent very wide to McFinley Park, and the car could very quickly be spat out. But meanwhile, we need to look back to the front, because here's a change for the lead. And that's Stuart Reynolds up the inside of Matthias Penteler in towards the chase chicane at the end of Conrod. And well, Reynolds there deciding to go for it, and the Fury Sim Sport driver, I think, reading the writing on the wall, which is with only 4.5 minutes to go before 20 minutes is done, he wants to now be dictating track position in order to be able to give himself the best possible strategic advantage. He has, of course, been tucked in behind Penteler for the best part of the last 15 minutes, so he's been saving some fuel, but now he wants to up the tempo. He wants to see if he can drop the RD Simsport car. If he can't, well, at least he'll have done more fuel saving, so arguably they'll be at least equal, if still not advantage Reynolds coming out of that pit lane. Here's a quick replay as to how that move was made. So it's the run down Conrod, and as they came down towards the right-hander, or in Reynolds with the overspeed here, looked to the inside. Penteler did not defend it. I think he knew what was coming and realised the fact there's no point fighting, so we need to work together to save fuel for each other at the moment. And Reynolds in the end being allowed to make that move stick. And a reminder of what was this move from Guy Edwards on Gilles Gone, 2 laps to 4. And well, this is coming on through turn number 2. And as he made his way up the hill, well, the Porsche driver in the end not quite having the pace up the hill. And I think in the end lifted off a little bit to let Edwards go. And that's how Edwards moved into 18th place. He's still got some work to go, however, as he tries to chase after Heinz Mayer. Meanwhile, speaking of Ollie Carbadine, we were on board with him until we left him. We come back to him now in your live pictures. He's still chasing after Goffin for 8th place in Am. And Goffin right now has lost Penny in terms of the gap. He's now 1.2 seconds to Penny in front. So it does mean, unfortunately, for Paul Goffin, he's not going to be able to gain that toe anymore, and instead he's now got to do the hard work on the road. The only upshot is he is into the mountain. This is where he can gain some time back on the Mercedes. The Porsche will be quick over the mountain. It's on the straights, so he's losing out quite drastically. And well, if he does lose more time, it's only going to hurt more and more. Heinz Mayer catch up to this group as well, as that was Carbadine getting very close to the exit wall there coming out of turn number 9, and when he had to overcorrect the car, and I think just a bit scared by the wall, and we've all been there, the fact when we carry too much speed coming through a corner over the mountain, sunnier, it really makes that line feel just that little bit more difficult. But coming down out of the dipper, we don't seem to be perturbed anymore, and Mayer staying with him there. But it is a bit of an odd one here for Heinz Mayer, because unless he's on a big fuel-saving strategy, and never say never, I wonder whether he's hit his wall with regards to pace. He does hit the wall there on the exit of Forest Elbow, grazes it, takes some of the paint off the rear of the car, but just about gets away with it. I think all the sponsor logos are still intact, and that's a good thing there for the advertisers. But as we come back to Lee Berridge, well, he's lost Mark Johnson to a tune of 4 seconds, but what he hasn't been able to shake off is Stephen Codman, who's now there with him as they come on to lap number 9, the boosted motorsport driver, and knowing that that pressure from that Ford Mustang is just becoming that little bit more unbearable. I think Codman right now up in the tempo slightly. He's not quite at the pace compared to Johnson. However, he did have the pace based on qualifying to beat Berridge, but he's lost out at the start. And now, can he find a way to get back before the pit stops play out? And understand, if they can go deeper than 20 minutes in this race, they all will. They'd ideally like to go as long as they possibly can. But given the fact we've had no retirements in this race, and also the field is very tightly wound at the moment, well, if you were to pit from the lead, I suspect you would be coming out well behind what would be the field, excluding perhaps Garner down in 19th place. You would have some clear track. I don't think anybody wants to be the first to pit, at least inside the top 10. However, you're towards the back if you're outside the top 10. Pitting now could be worth it on the undercut if you feel as though you can make the fuel tank go just that little bit longer, perhaps in the second or the third stint. So fuel's definitely going to be the big quotient factor here, but there are spaces opening up with the field still being so tight. And that's the great thing about the racing so far. And we do normally expect week in, week out with each round of the Sim Racing magazine is that everyone's very closely competitive, and also you have some very cool, calm and consistent drivers, and therefore it normally means the field very gradually spreads, whereas in other series you may see the field spread quite notably over the opening 10 to 15 minutes or 1 hour race, because mistakes occur, drivers get it wrong, and inconsistencies also arise. These drivers right now really are some of the most consistent you'll see out there. That's why everyone having to be on their toes. And with these GT4 cars requiring so much precision ever since their physics and time model update the best part of 8 months ago, well, these cars right now are definitely so much harder to drive than before, and where it's absolute credit to our drivers for how they're able to handle them around the circuit. But speaking of handling things over the mountain, Berridge was able to pick up 2 tenths over Codman. Codman is now coming back at him down the run of Conrod. You can see in the rear of the picture, there's Chris Jennings getting closer little by little. In fact, Jennings' pace has really improved as this race has gone on. His last lap was a 2 minute 13.92, and now he's almost in slipstream distance of Codman, a fellow Ford Mustang driver. So right now, Jennings, whatever he was missing in qualifying, he is finding it in the race, although he's taking some time to. But meanwhile, Stephen Codman comes into the pits. He's the first driver to come in. He's going to go for the undercut strategy. He splits the first stint exactly at the 20-minute mark into the race, and therefore he's going to try and make this race symmetrical, at least around the first pit stop. So, well, we see a reaction from Lee Berridge. Will he go on to deliver an absolute monster lap and then come in, or does he just keep pumping out the laps now, or do we see more drivers potentially come into the pit lane? Well, at least for now, it does seem as though Codman is the only driver in. So Codman is the anomaly. Everyone else, meanwhile, just simply making an exception of him. As we do see Stuart Reynolds and Pentelar, the gap is opening. Reynolds' last lap, a 2 minute 12.19. So a personal best and the fastest lap of the race. What was 500ths quicker than Pentelar, and already Reynolds has gone purple in the first sector again. So Reynolds right now, I think the fuel tank's almost dry. The car's quite light, and Pentelar is responding. He is also setting personal best in the opening sector. They're both absolutely gunning for gold right now in terms of this lap. I think this is going to be the in-lap here for both of these drivers. I think the fuel tank can't go much longer, so therefore they're going to push each other to the limit. And it's these laps where mistakes can arise. But back from them, we look to Carbadine versus Goffin. And right now, Paul Goffin's still under pressure. But Ryan Penny, in fact, has been caught up too. I think Penny's had a bit of an error somewhere towards the end of the previous lap or at the start of this one, perhaps at Hell's Corner, because Sonny Penny right now is not looking safe at all here. He was the best part of almost 2 seconds clear, but that gap is now down to 6 to 8 tenths. And Ollie Carwadine being brought along for the ride by Goffin. Heinz Mayer not getting any closer than 1 second. He brushes the wall there. Coming out to turn number 9 towards turn number 10. We'll get away with it that time. But that was definitely a big near miss as Guy Edwards catches up. And you can see Mayer right now not as quick coming through McPhillamy into the skyline. He's been a bit shaken by that. And when you hit the wall once over the mountain, if you get away with it, it does. It knocks your confidence massively. And I think Mayer definitely a bit shaken. But as Edwards tucks in behind, he's not going to find a way through until they get on to Conrod. Meanwhile, going another lap is Reynolds, so he does not come in. I think the push was all about just simply up in the tempo in preparation for a pit stop at 2 minute 12.106. An absolutely staggering lap there. New fastest lap of the race, Matthias Pentelar, a 2 minute 12.293. Court, a 2 minute 12.480. They're all picking up the tempo here, although causing a bit of a lonely third place, so much so he's not on camera because we look back to fourth, and it's 10 versus Idris Abdullahi. Ian Anderson's into the pit lane, so he comes in number 455 Aston Martin. He was at the time running third in the AM class. Well, I wonder how much closer he'll be to Stephen Codman now by going 1 lap longer, or will Codman have jumped back ahead of him? We'll see very shortly as we do look back to Penny, also Goffin and Carwadine. They both go through. No signs of pit stops from these guys. As meanwhile, Guy Edwards into the pit lane, and we'll get the amount of fuel he's had to use to recover in this race. Also a fast repair that will most likely get used now. That's understandable. Stephen Codman comes in towards the final corner. As he does so, well, the track mouse racing Ford Mustang gliding sideways. Ian Anderson's leaving his pit box. He's almost to the end of the pit lane, but he's not near the pit limiter line yet, and Stephen Codman will take that place back. And so Anderson, unfortunately, not able to close the gap, even though he did have a 1.5 second faster pit stop, and end-to-end in the pit lane, he is going to replicate that by 1.3 seconds. So Anderson did gain some time on Codman, but it wasn't enough. Meanwhile, well, there's an almost near move coming in towards the cutting from Carwadine, looking up the inside. He's definitely getting a little bit bolder right now, is Ollie. And, well, definitely liking this version of Ollie this season. He's growing with that Mercedes, their own worthy driver. Well, thought about it that time, but didn't quite come about as they come over the crest and in towards McPhillamy Park very shortly, albeit via turn number 9 first. Well, understandably, Carwadine at this point, he's itching for a move here, but I think he's just got to play patient a little bit more, because that Mercedes, surely he's done a bit of fuel saving. If so, he'll be able to make the jump on Goffin in the pits either way, unless he hasn't been. Perhaps he's been driving full out here to stay with the Porsche driver, and if so, well, we've definitely got 2 very equally matched AM drivers. But that's the great intrigue, of course. We don't exactly know where they are on strategy. But speaking of strategy, well, with only 6 minutes to go before we get to the halfway point, we are seeing our leaders come in. So Reynolds is in from the lead, Pencelar and Core. Has anybody thought about going a whole half an hour on a single tank of fuel? I don't think it's going to be possible, to be fair, given the fact if they're coming in now, they'd have to do at least another 2, if not 3 laps. I think that would be too much to ask from a driver. So it does seem as though we're on the 2 stop here, but we've almost got into a window of a 1 stop. And I wonder if that's going to be on the mind of any driver as they come into the pit lane, noticing how deep we are into the race so far. And, well, as everyone makes the way on in from the lead pack. Well, meanwhile, Ryan Penny and Paul Goffin there, still fighting with Carwadine following. Well, no change at the moment. They all deflect to the pit lane. And where's Heinz Mayer? There he is. So he follows them in as well, but everyone's taking it nice and easy into the pits. But as they do, well, Stuart Reynolds surely will be leaving shortly, and he does. Matthias Pencelar matched in practically for pit time length. Niels Core follows, although he's going to be a bit further back and with some damage to the front end of that car that I think they have had the fast repair on. And Idris Abdullahi, oh, side by side, coming out the pit lane. And in the end, Matthias Tem just sneaks out ahead of Idris Abdullahi. And, well, Tem holds on to 4th for now, but it's going to be another stint here where it's going to be the battle of the 2 Mercedes drivers. And what a very close call between them, as Mark Johnson, meanwhile, leaves the pit lane. But look at that, Stephen Codman on the undercut. He's come out ahead of Lee Berridge. Berridge has lost out there in the pit stops as we ride aboard the front bump here of the boosted Motorsport 41. And Berridge right now, he will be shocked to see this. The fact he's 3 tenths behind Stephen Codman, and Codman with his out lap plus also his 2 flying laps before the pit stops all played out for the rest of the field. Well, suddenly now it's 1 1-2 is the prerogative in the AM class for Track Mouse Racing. But can the boosted motorsport 41 of Berridge find a way to spoil the party and reopen it all up? As Mark Johnson 2.5 seconds ahead. Well, Stephen Codman has done a lot of fuel saving on his opening stint, only 19 seconds. So Codman right now, unless he's short fueled in order to make this jump, which might have been part of his strategy, well, to be fair to him, he's definitely not wasted any time in the pit lane the first time around. We'll have to wait and see. Meanwhile, Goffin and Penny are still together, literally like this as we see up on screen, and that's going to be Penny trying to make a move from Griffins in towards the cutting. Still not going to work out for him. Martin Rendell, well, since the pit stop now, Rob Sharp is all over the back of him like a bad rash. So whilst they did swap places at the start of the race, Rendell now under pressure in turn. So Sharp has gone from being hunted to Hunter, and I think he really does enjoy this. And he puts the pressure on, and the Scotsman comes down the hill. But the Boreas racing driver, they're having to take it quite easy. As you can see, Rendell went quite deep in towards turn 13, but got it together for the dipper. That's always a bit of a worrisome error, but thankfully mid-engine rear-wheel drive Porsche, they will just settle that rear down nicely and get it together. But he goes very deep there at Forest Elbow, and Rendell making a mistake. And as they come out the corner, Will Sharp can't quite get the power down he would like. He has to take a quite tight exit line to make sure he doesn't hit the rear of the 33. But here they go, and in the draft right now, Sharp surely's got to be thinking about this. Pulls to what will be the inside for the start of the chase chicane. Side by side all the way they come here. The battle of the two Porsches. Getting ready for turn 20. The right-hander, Rendell on the outside, gives way for now. And Rob Sharp and him will take that place up in the 5th in the AM class. But I suspect Rendell's going to want to try and get that place back sooner rather than later. But a small error there, and that is exactly the difference between you being ahead versus you being behind. But meanwhile, so as not to leave other battles behind, Chris Jennings, meanwhile, still on a charge. Ian Anderson now behind him. So Jennings making a little bit more ground up in a 10th place. But of course, he's still got another 3 places to go before he's cleared all of the AM drivers. Next on his list is Lee Berridge, 4.5 seconds up the road. If he can catch up to him, he is bringing Anderson along with him for the party at the moment, as these drivers go on to lap number 13. At the front, Reynolds and Pentelar, they are now 7/10ths apart as they come into Quarry Bend. But as they do, well, that's a little bit of understeer there from Reynolds. Got to be careful of the wall. And the problem is, when you commit to lines, he does brush the wall down towards turn number 8. When you commit to these lines, you take your foot off the throttle, thinking the car's going to understeer. The car is going to understeer even more at that point. You've got to keep the power down to get it to turn through these corners. So therefore, for Reynolds, once you commit to a line, that's it. You've got no other way back, and will just avoid in what could have been an absolutely grisly end to his race there. Meanwhile, coming out of Mafili Park, well, that's it, just Abdullahi really baring his fangs as he comes down the hill. We ride on board. We just start that racing 269. He really wants this place off of Tem. He is fed up of sitting behind him for so long. But in the end, he's not going to find a way through over the mountain here. I think he thought about it into Skyline. And, well, looking nice and tight there into Forest Elbow. That's to get out of the dirt, yeah, to offset the understeer that's being made by the Fury Simsport car in front of him. And coming off the bend, well, you can see here building up that speed. And now he's going to be in the full slipstream. Let's show you how much speed he does pick up. Remember, of course, these cars have got a bit more fuel in them now. But in the tow, well, already at 153 miles an hour. And in qualifying, they were topping out 166 before they went on the brakes. And he just Abdullah here at 167 before he goes onto the brakes. Up the inside he goes. And we're late lunge on the inside. But Tem in the end lets it go and tries to go for the switch back there. And he just Abdullah, he taking that full place. Was it all part of Tem's strategy? Is he just right now letting the satellite racing car take over? Well, not quite here as he looks around the outside. And he just Abdullah, he has to go defensive. So these two enjoying a battle. They're good rivals on and off the circuit. And heading on towards the 14th tour. They complete the first half of the race. And we just Abdullah, he gets the upper hand with 30 minutes complete. But Daniel Perry watches on from behind here thinking, can I come out and play? He's 3 seconds behind. Can he get a little bit closer? Can he get involved? That'll be a hope here as he runs a bit wide out of turn and wants to try and pick up some more speed. But unfortunately, that grass is not going to help him. But the battle for full continues now as it goes into part 2 and heading up the hill where it's going to be Idris Abdullahi on the left. It's going to be Tem on the right. And will Tem go around the outside of Rugrun's Bend? No, the answer is definitely not so because Idris Abdullahi just defends it on the inside line. Classic defensive manoeuvre there and a very easy one to pull off perhaps. But again, Tem right now just teasing out a move. Mark Johnson further back. There you can see him ahead of Codman. Codman 2.3 seconds behind and Lee Berridge being dropped. So your top 3 in the AM class right now, spreading out a little bit. But it does seem as though Johnson and Codman matching each other and Berridge just a little bit too far behind on pace. 3 tenths was the gap they pulled on Berridge last time out, whereas Johnson and Codman's laps were practically identical to the 10th, but not quite the 100th, with Codman in the end missing 300ths by comparison. But whilst all this has been going on, we have had a bit of an incident, unfortunately, for Ryan Penny, who has made his way to the pit lane. And this is what happened to your Mercedes driver. So this was coming in towards Griffin's Bend. As he did so, it was on lap number 13. Got the power down a bit too early, perhaps. And no, in fact, he got the power down at the right time, but the rear of the car let go. Hit the barrier there after the rear left tyre span out of the exit curve of Griffin's Bend. A nasty knock to the front of the car there, but thankfully just held the brakes, let the field go, and then just gradually crawled it back up to speed. And after that, we take a look back at the battle, of course, between Idris Abdullahi and Tem. That brilliant overtake that was made only moments ago. And this was all about the drag race. Down Conrad and in towards the chase. And Idris Abdullahi up the inside there, going all in. And Tem trying to come back in with the switchback through the chicane, but it was a bit too late. And Idris Abdullahi saw it coming, but it wasn't without a bit of a counter-attack coming down in towards Murray's Bend, and well, this of course set up the run onto what was the mountain straight, but even then Idris Abdullahi was able to hold on. But back to live racing we come, and as we do, well, of course, we've still got a bit more in the distance between all these drivers. And Will Johnson making sure that right now the AM lead is definitely very much in his hands. It's a 2-minute 13.659 for him. Stephen Codman, meanwhile, a 2-minute 13.918. So another 2.5 tenths there, or thereabouts, being added to the lead by Mark Johnson. And Codman not really having a response. In fact, Berridge was quicker that time around, so Berridge matching them. Well, hoping that perhaps he can get involved later on. As Ian Anderson, you can see in the rear of the picture, he's still following Chris Jennings. And Jennings here trying to break the draft a little bit. Albeit I think Anderson just wants to use the Axis Sport 4 Mustang driver as a magnet to pull him forward. And well, speaking of Axis Sport cars, it is a shame we haven't got Niels Cooler here today. I would have been intrigued to see what he would have been able to make of the racing in his Porsche. But still, we hope to see him back on the grid in 2 weeks' time at the Hockenheimring at Baden-Württemberg in Germany. But as we do see Anderson following the number 22 Ford Mustang and Jennings. Well, meanwhile, back to Heinz Mayer we go. And, well, a bit of a change here, of course. Ollie Carwadine falling away from Paul Goffin. And does it look as though Paul Goffin's got some damage on the front of his car? I think he has on the front right from the driver's perspective. I think he's hit a wall because it does seem as though some of the body paneling has been pushed back in over the tyre. And well, the car's okay, but I think he's losing some time on the straights here. He was already losing time to the Mercedes behind, so it's gone a little bit wrong there for Paul Goffin. It's not the way he's wanted it to go whatsoever. And well, heading onwards, and definitely right now, he's going to be battling against the elements to a degree. But as they roll the way on through, Ollie Carwadine, of course, just trying to keep his head down, do what he can. Albeit chasing after Heinz Mayer at the moment. The gap is 4.2 seconds, and Mayer, his teammate, definitely trying to do everything he can to beat Goffin at this point as they come over the rise. But we jump on board with the 222, and the Rome worthy driver here with the sun definitely now up in the sky, no longer being blinded over skyline as much as they would previously. But here it's not going to be an opportunity. He's got to stay close and hope he can make the move coming out Forest Elbow, where the Mercedes will be the much stronger car. Riding the way down into Forest Elbow at this time. It's all about the exit here, something the Porsche is very good at doing, but not when he runs that deep. Goffin definitely, I think he's got damage to that car. He is not looking happy at all in it. And Mayer right now goes all the way out to the red line. In fact, I think he hits the red line there and actually bounces off the limiter for a brief moment, and that Porsche is running away. So I think Mayer, well, just not quite getting his gear shifts absolutely right, because Goffin is just bolting out of the stable. The best part of half a second clear now. And well, our 222 driver here lose an opportunity. I have to see whether there's a bigger plan here afoot. Whether it is all about potentially making the jump in the pit lane the next time it comes around. But as we leave the onboard there for a moment, and that's the battle for 7th place in AM. Martin Rendell still chasing after Rob Sharp, and after losing out to Sharp, coming down towards the chase chicane, with Rendell making a mistake of his own at Forest Elbow a few laps ago. Right now, things definitely seem to be staying in the favour of Sharp there for 5th place in AM. Albeit, will it be that way towards the very end? Well, maybe some would say yes, some would say they doubt it, but either way, a bit of a friendly fight between those two. Back up to the front, and as we do take a sip of water, this is Stuart Reynolds right now, starting to just inch that gap a little bit more open, almost up to 7.5 tenths now versus Pentelar. And well, I think now it really is gloves off here, and whilst they will be doing some fuel saving and tyre management, they're also both pushing for even quicker laps. As we do get the lovely sonorous roar of German V8, followed by American V8, and well, 5 litres of displacement there from the Coyote engine. of the Ford Mustang. Indeed, it's been the whole new Ford Mustang road car introduced to the world as of 2023 and being introduced to the world of racing in 2024 as the Ford Mustang GT3, and it's obviously the GT4 coming with it. Will prove a very popular car around the world with multiple different editions. But of course, if you do want the ultimate thrill, you go for the Dark Horse machine there. In tribute to, of course, the prancing pony on the front of the car, and well, definitely the closest thing you have to a GT4 racer legally on the road. As he heads onwards towards another lap. Well, right now, Matthias Pentelar definitely keeping things on the road as Neil's score 4 seconds back. Right now, third place, and not quite able to match the leaders over the distance of the race, but in this stint at least, he is staying with them in terms of lap time at the moment. Only 100 slower than Pentelar on that previous lap, and that's how he's been for the last couple of laps, it seems. That gap inching a little bit further away from him. He's never too far away as Neil's core, and understandably, I think he's definitely set for third place, but if something should happen between the top two, I think he's going to be within touching distance to potentially stealing away further spots on the podium, if not the win. He just Abdullahi and Tem. Well, since their swap and their initial battle back in towards Griffin's Bend, well, now the satellite racing Mercedes has crept away a little bit from the Fury SimSport Mercedes. However, Tem, I think at the moment, is now in a full fuel saving mode, as Daniel Perry 4 seconds back at this point, and the Paddock Motorsport driver is probably just looking into the distance and thinking, if only I had a couple more miles an hour on the straight, I'd be able to stay with that group and I'd be chasing down fourth place and not having to settle for quite a lonely 6th place. You've got to feel for him after the joys of victory at VIR, the thrill, of course, in the Thrills and Spills race in round number 3. Right now, definitely all the time is spilling away from him, and there's just nothing there for him to be able to catch up to. Meanwhile, Heinz Mayer all over the back of Paul Goffin once again, and he's going to get a second chance at this in close proximity as they head in towards turn number 2, but does not look to the inside initially. I think right now he's thinking not yet, do it on the end of the mountain, so coming out to Forest Elbow, and in that way you don't have the mental pressure of the Porsche being all over your backside, where there is some intelligence to that, and the fact that Porsche will be the quicker car as they make the mountain sequence. But heading on through the cutting and in towards Quarry Bend. Right now, the 164 driver from the United Kingdom, indeed a winner in the AM class so far this season, although I think he's going to be very hard-pressed to make it 2 wins here today, given where he is currently and the pace of the race. Right now, Goffin trying to pick up a few more points, and well, as he does make a bit of a mistake there coming through turn 9 in towards 10. You can see Mag gets much closer there, but Goffin in turn, relying on the fact the mountain's only 1 wide, but runs wide up McFinley Park. One mistake adds up to another mistake here. You don't want to start queuing them up, but as he comes down the hill, well, now he's only got 1 line he can focus on here, and he does not want to run deep into the dip, otherwise the barrier awaits you very quickly. So Goffin does seem to get himself back under wraps there as he comes down the hill, but indeed small mistakes there all adding up and a bit of pressure building as Marion gets a good run out the corner, and this time 3 attempts back, inching closer and closer. But as we have Ian Anderson into the pit lane as I look at my Conte booth window, so Anderson decides it's time to pit, and I wonder if Mayer here is in fact deciding just to lift and coast behind now and save a bit more fuel rather than fight it, albeit he might want to take track position there off the SRM Porsche. Well, we'll see them come down in towards the chase, and the answer's still going to be no. He's not going to go for it, and Goffin will be allowed to hold on just that little bit longer. Anderson being serviced, no tyre changes there, just fuel going in the car, so I think he feels set to go to the end of the race now on his tyres. But meanwhile, your leaders stay out, Stuart Reynolds and Pentelar, they're going to go a little bit longer. So I think Anderson trying to steal from the book of Stephen Codman and use the undercut going into his final stint in order to get ahead. But where will this bring him out as Goffin and Mayer make the way on past? There they are. So next up will be Ollie Carbadine, but he'll clear Anderson because Anderson's just about to come off the pit limiter. There he goes. And Ian Anderson in the end, well, a bit of an interesting place he's come out. He's within a second of Ollie Carwadine. Now, understanding Carwadine will need to take that second pit stop. And indeed, everyone in front most likely will need to, unless everyone's suddenly gone to a 1 stop. We don't think that's going to be possible, given the fact it required an extra 3 laps of fuel saving, which I don't think was going to be realistic unless you were driving several seconds a lap slower than everyone else. Right now, Anderson, he's going to have the draft here for a brief month. That is going to help him a little bit. In fact, that could gain him some time. And Carwadine's pace compared to Anderson's pace on their respective laps, it hasn't been too far shy. So Anderson may have just picked up the perfect pace card to follow, where it's for a single lap or multiple laps. If he can get within a second onto the Conrad Straight, he's going to gain the best part of about 3-4 tenths. Meanwhile, back into the pros, and here we see 2 drivers who've never been separated by more than half a second since they changed places. And he just Abdullahi Abdullahi. Will he come in this time? The answer is going to be no. He goes a 19th lap, and Tim follows him. As Daniel Perry now 4.6 seconds back. Well, he's just losing time. Hand over fist here, and he's not doing anything wrong. It's just the pace of the car, and indeed the pace of the driver versus the other machinery out there. And whilst Daniel Perry has definitely got all the will in the world to win another race, unfortunately today he's not going to be able to make it happen unless some magic happens late on in this race. Stuart Reynolds, your leader, with Pentelar behind. Tried to drop him early on in the second stint, but wasn't quite able to do so when he did come out fine on all cylinders, and the gap almost got up to 8 tenths at one point. But Pentelar now back with him, and I wonder if Reynolds has just turned the pace down slightly to make sure that as a result he does not burn too much fuel, because despite the fact he was sat behind Pentelar for the majority of the opening stint, it was Pentelar who matched him in terms of stationary time in the pit lane. So the RD Simsport driver did a lot of fuel saving that Ford Mustang, and keep in mind that the Ford Mustang is the most thirsty of the cars here on the grid, excluding the Aston Martin. So really a huge effort there for the number 12 driver, and he could be a bit of a fuel whisperer here today. I think that's what Reynolds is worried about, is that Pentelar may just jump him back. Ooh, a little bit slide there, coming down out of Skyline. Well, you can definitely tell these cars getting light now. When they start to slide like that under braking, they're already very much weight transferred forward cars at that point, but a rear sliding means tyres are warm, fuel tank is almost empty, fuel tank's in the back of these cars as well, and therefore you have got a very light car, and it's time to give it a top up when you've still got the best part of 18 minutes left to go. Being Anderson, as we thought, catching all over the back of Ollie Carwadine now, but the problem is Carwadine has not pitted, and now Anderson's going to make a choice. Does he now wait behind and lose time, or does he force a move which is going to cost him time, but it may help him in the long run? Well, either way he's going to lose out here, but which of the two approaches is the riskier versus the more rewarding? And I would say sitting behind is definitely going to be the less rewarding and the less risk. However, it definitely is going to put him at risk of losing more places compared to the risk of being in contact with his rival. See, because Carwadine staying out with Mayer and Goffin 3 seconds up the road. But Anderson's battle is to try and chase down Berridge in third place if he can. New fastest lap of the race, Stuart Reynolds, a 2-minute 12.03. So any fuel saving that's been done has been thrown out the window. Although, to be fair, if he's setting a purple lap there, he'll be setting another one shortly, I suspect, before coming into the pit lane. And Neil scored 4.2 seconds back in the rear of the picture. They're all now stepping up the pace a little bit more. Stephen Codman into the pits, and he comes in with 17 minutes to go before going on to lap 20. Johnson stays out. Berridge stays out. You see him cut through the camera there. And Neil, Chris Jennings and Rob Sharp seem to be staying out as well. At least Jennings is definitely doing so. So the 10th place pro driver at the moment, carrying on his journey. Rob Sharp, does he come in? No, he does not. He's going to go another lap. He has dropped Rendell to 2 seconds. So right now, does seem as though there the light blue, aqua, pink and dark blue machine. Right now, Rendell still chasing down Rob Sharp, but time is going against him here, and Sharp is gradually gapping him little by little. But credit where it's due to Martin. He really is keeping his head down and trying to chase after one of his big rivals. As meanwhile, that's elbows out there, coming in towards Griffin's Bend. That's just Abdullah. He going defensive versus Tem. Tem trying to go around the outside from Quarry all the way through in towards the triple F sequence, and in the end, that was never going to work. But Tem absolutely right now looking for an opportunity. I wonder if there was a bit of an oversteer coming out of the cutting from Idris Abdullahi, and that's how Tem was able to get alongside. Well, the good news is we can get a quick replay of that, ladies and gentlemen, and here we go for a very brief trip back in time. So this was coming out of Griffin's, and it was Tem on the outside here into the cutting, so he had the momentum and went for the switchback. He dived at the inside at last possible moment. What a clever move there from Tem. But Idris Abdullahi was not letting go. He went to turn in. Only the one Idris Abdullahi had not backed out at all, and they gave each other the space in the end to cooperate, and that's how Idris Abdullahi was able to hold on. But brave move there from Matthias Tem. Saw the opportunity, he went for it, but that required a lot of expectation from his rival. But these two are battling once again. So we come back to live race. And now Tem with a run down Colrod, but Idris Abdullahi on the inside in towards the chase chicane, and well can the Salah Racing car hold on. You can see Tem trying to go outside to inside. He'll get ahead. There's a little touch. Oh no! And he goes wrong for Idris Abdullahi, who slides onto the grass, and the tiniest of touches there. But unfortunately, with the counter forces between the two cars, the 269 being turned around, I don't think any malice meant there, but a small touch at those speeds, and when they're going for a quarter as well, these cars are unbalanced, and indeed they're very light as well by comparison with the road cars they're taken from, and naturally you are going to see something like that happen. But commiserations there to Ben Idris Abdullahi. He'll be absolutely fuming at that initially, but you look back on it afterwards and see, okay, how could we have done it better? And I'm sure him and Matthias will both have a chat about that one. But whilst that's happened, Ian Anderson still glued to the back of Ollie Carbadine here. And the man who has taken 2 pit stops, where he's ahead of Ryan Penny and also Jules Gardner. But right now, this is not where he wants to be. Stephen Codman has definitely cleared him quite significantly. But he'll draft his way on past now Carbadine. But you can see that Mercedes has just got so much straight line speed. And in the end, Anderson will just get ahead. But he has to take a lot of curb. He sends the car up into the air for a brief moment. In fact, I don't think a single wheel was touching the ground for about what was 0.2 of a second. And Ian Anderson does take 8th place in the AM class, 16th overall. But remember, that is on track. That is not strategic position, and he has lost some time as a result of this. And that's not to point a finger on Ollie Carbadine. It's just the way it's worked out. Going Edwards into the pit lane. The 6-7 Motorsport McLaren be in service for the last time today, hopefully. And we'll Paul Goffin and Heinz Mayer still together, nose to tail. And Mayer 2 attempts here, but right now glued to the back of his friend off the circuit, but rival on the circuit. No change between these two, albeit I think if Mayer's going to go for it, he's going to have to go for it now, because with only a 10th between them here, well, he's going to look up the inside in towards Griffin's Bend, and well, it's all or nothing here. But in the end, Goffin just beats him on the brakes on that outside line, and Mayer has no response there other than to let it go. Oh, hold up a second, I'm hearing my... Oh, goodness me, that's Chris Jennings. I was going to say, I'm hearing in my ear saying it's gone wrong, and for the number 22 driver, that's all in pieces. That's at Skyline, and that car's going to be towed to the pits. There's no way that's coming down out of the mountain unless it's on a crane. Alternatively, what would be a flatbed. And well, sadly for Chris Jennings, it's all gone wrong. We'll get a replay of that very shortly, ladies and gentlemen. But a nasty surprise, that one. But thankfully, nobody else caught up in it. But you've got to feel for Chris. He was enjoying a good run inside the top 10. And son, it's all falling apart with only the best part of 13 minutes to go. So close to the finish, but not quite there. As meanwhile, Heinz Mayer thinking about a potential move into the place where Jennings just met his demise. As we ride on board here with a own worthy 222. And Will Mays definitely building that confidence here. But it seems like Goffin, where he had the pace over the mountain previously to outrun him, no longer is that the case. The 164 driver here really feeling the pressure, as Mayer, I think, wanted to go to the inside there, but decided against it. But coming out to the corner, well, now can Mayer get this done? Of course, he had those poor runs on the straight earlier on where he was bouncing off the limiter. But here he goes. He makes his way on down, and this time, any closer than this, and he will be pulling out. And we've got him right now into the middle of the road, making himself nice and wide, saying to Mayer, okay, where are you going to go for it? And Mayer right now just simply backs off there, and Goffin doing what you can do on the Conrad Straight. Put the car in the middle of the road, force your old to make a decision. Either squeeze on one side, or alternatively stay behind. And Mayer doing the latter. And the understanding is, I suspect, that the pit stop is just around the corner, should they be on the 2-stop here. But neither driver comes in, and Mayer decides to continue the chase. It's a bit of a thriller, this one, as they fight over AM's 6th place. Leaving them be for a brief moment, we take a look back in time to what exactly happened to Chris Jennings. So this was Jennings making his way towards McPhillamy Park, and as he did so, behind the car of Jules Gardner, and tapped him on the rear, and that's what sent him on around there. I think that was Jules. It was indeed, and I think it was Jennings. Well, ricocheting from one side of the circuit to the other. This is what it looked like on board from Jennings' perspective. Nasty instant, this one, but you can see the difference in speed there. And I think being caught out by Gardner being quite slow into McPhillamy Park, but unfortunately tapped the rear of him when he was trying to carry the speed, and at that point it became a passenger. The unbalancing of the car is what set it on its way, and you see they didn't even shift down from 4th to 3rd, and that's the fact. I think he was so starstruck by the car in the end, and indeed it was all in pieces just like that. But, ladies and gentlemen, with that and smoke piling out the car, well, we do have some pit stops, as we do see Stuart Reynolds and also Matthias Pentelar coming in. And just in front of them, that's Ryan Penny, who's almost going a lap down. And, well, oh my goodness, there's Stuart Reynolds there, having to make sure to avoid their own worthy car as they come through. Well, the Oris Digital car there, let's get the team name right. And as Reynolds makes his way on through, well, Pentelar here will gain a little bit of time in the pit lane already. This could be very close as they come to a standstill. Mayer, meanwhile, well, they've yet to leave the mountain, but all over the back of Goffin, as we're seeing everybody coming in with 10 minutes to go. So the fuel tank in the end going a considerable distance once more, but we have been forced to have a 3 stints or a 2-stop strategy, and it is going to be a sprint to the finish here. Our drivers will take the fuel they need, but Pentelar already leaving the pit lane. A quick stop there, the best part of what was 2 seconds faster compared to Stuart Reynolds. And well, Matthias Pentelar takes the lead. He absolutely overruns Reynolds in the pit lane, and Stuart Reynolds right now drops from 1st to 2nd. And 9, he's got all the work to do. 2.1 seconds is the gap, and he's got 10 minutes to do it. So this lap plus another 4. Well, for Reynolds, this is going to be an uphill battle, and I don't just mean because he's driving up the mountain. He feels like at this point, Matthias Pencelar might have just pulled off a bit of a magic trick there. Niels Gore behind in third, hasn't really gained or lost on the pair of them, so he seems set for third place. Matthias Tem and Daniel Perry making their way onwards, and, well, Matthias Tem has completely left Ben Idris Abdullahi behind. What on earth has happened to Idris Abdullahi? I think he's had some sort of moment, because he's lost out a huge amount of time. In fact, Daniel Perry has jumped ahead of the Satellite Racing Mercedes. Now, I've got no information to say what's happened to Idris Abdullahi. I wonder what on earth has happened there. Well, something's gone wrong, and he's fallen down the order as a result. We'll see if we can get a replay of that when we can. We'll have to find out, ladies and gentlemen, because that's definitely a bit of an odd one there. I just wonder whether potentially on pit lane entry something has gone a little bit wrong. We might be able to get a replay of it, in fact. I think he's had a bit of a poor pit entry, and that will explain the story. Meanwhile, Ian Anderson, well, since the pit stop, he has lost out to the point he's behind Rob Sharp. So the undercut strategy did not work out in the favour of Anderson. He's actually lost the place to Sharp because of being caught up behind Ollie Carwadine. And now Anderson's got to try and make this move on the road. But coming out of the cutting and onwards, well, the Scotsman there incredibly close coming through the corner. Battling now with his fellow countrymen as they make the way through Quarry and up towards what will be McPhilly Park. They continue. But right now, the Aston Martin driver, who's definitely had one of those races where it's been relatively quiet, but look at the speed he's carrying here through turn number 9. He's going to go for it into McPhilly Park. You don't normally see this, but he's going to go on the inside. And Ian Anderson in the end dives up the inside. Rob Sharp gives him the space, and Anderson in the end, what a lovely move that was. That's definitely going to be a contender for move of the round. And Ian Anderson in the end threw himself on the inside there and said there's no time like the present, and got it done. And Rob Sharp in the end, well, he had to give him the space. He knew what was coming, but what a move it was. But indeed, as we do see that edgy backhand reminding us that Matthias had the contact with Idris Abdullahi. And thank you for the reminder there, good sir. And that would explain as to what exactly has happened. Do appreciate the reminder. And well, as we do see Anderson coming on down, well, Sharp's now back with him, and Guy Edwards as well. But as they come on to Conrad, Edwards there, we'll be watching these two AM drives. I'm thinking I need to pass both of them to get some more points in the overall championship. But Anderson right now just trying to make sure that Sharp does not find a way inside him. But as Edwards tucks up the inside of Sharp, the McLaren driver will now hope he can do the same to Anderson. And Anderson here will be looking at his mirrors and putting things to himself, okay, let the 6-7 car go, but do it at a place that's going to prove advantageous to you. And well, the best place to do that would be on the mountain straight. Well, he's got to get out of turn number 1 first. That's turn 23. On to the next one he goes. Meanwhile, Heinzman Paul Goffin exactly as they were going into the pits. Separated by 2 tenths. They're still trying to find a way in. No way in at the moment as he looks up the inside again. But Goffin just able to outbrake him there. I think Maz had the tap of the back of that Porsche because he's definitely got some damage to the front bumper of his car. As his driver's coming down and in towards the next braking zone. In fact, we have some information with regards to Idris Abdullahi's pit stop, ladies and gentlemen. And here we go. We go back in time. Now, this was Idris Abdullahi making his way in towards the pits. Now, in itself, well, in fact, he had that contact as he made his way down, but we also did see a little bit of a slower run as the 269 driver came on in, and that was because I think he may have just overshot his pit box in the haste to get to a pit stop as he made his way in behind none other than Mark Johnson. But as he did so, well, definitely a bit of a frustrating moment there, and in fact, he came to a stop. Well, in fact, it's not going to quite show us what's happened, or is it? As he eventually did get to his pit box, but what went wrong? Went onto the brakes, and, well, after that, I think after a couple of seconds, well, in fact, we've been misinformed there, ladies and gentlemen. I think we've had a glitch with regards to our information there. So we do apologise for that. We come back to your live racing, and indeed he would have taken the fast repair after his contact with the tyres 10. We all went a little bit wrong with them, and, well, as we do come back to Matt and Goffin still together, Goffin holding on for now, but the 164 driver definitely feeling the pressure and the strain. It does seem as though Mayer at the moment, as much pressure as he puts on, Goffin is able to just stay there or thereabouts. At the front, meanwhile, Matthias Pencelar, his advantage to none other than Stuart Reynolds has been completely slashed, and it's been brought down to 7 tenths at the moment as they head up the rise. But just before we can see the story with them, Ian Anderson lets Guy Edwards go. Guy Edwards on the inside there, in towards the chase, and takes that place. So, easy move there for the number 7 driver, and Anderson doing the right thing to make sure he prioritises full place in AM and does not let Rob Sharp get too much closer. So Sharp's got a bit more work to do, and Anderson now can definitely tuck into the toe of Edwards and use him as a little bit of a pace car for at least a lap, if not 2. Your leaders making their way on around, and the excitement definitely coming on the bound here as they roll the way through the corners. As they do, well, Pentelar and Reynolds are very close together at the moment. 6/10, we say that's very close because given how the gap was leaving the pit lane, you wouldn't believe the fact that Reynolds has already brought that gap down, and in fact bringing it down by half a second a lap over the last 2 laps, and this one he's even quicker. And Stuart Reynolds in fact almost looking up the inside into Forestdale, but I think part of his brain was saying go for it, surprise him, and then a much more angelic part of his mind was probably saying no, don't go for it, that's definitely not a good idea. But coming down and on to Conrad, well, the gap opens up to 6/10, and right now Matthias Pentelar safe just for a little bit longer, although definitely I think we've been to himself that gap is at any moment going to crumble away. But with 2 laps to go after this one, we will get 27 laps in today, if my mental mathematics is correct. Stuart Reynolds 9. There's 1 car between him and a 3rd win of the season. And meanwhile, for the RD Simsport Ford Mustang of Pentelar, a first win could only be 2 laps in the distance. But between that... Oh, hold up a second. What has happened here? That is Paul Coffin and Heinz Mayer. They've come together as they both get out of the way as quickly as they can. Well, they were getting close, but in the end, it's got a bit too close to both of them. They get their cars turned around, and tears between them. But before we take a look back at that, we take a look back at what happened to Idris Abdullahi earlier on, just to remind you with the confusion that we had as to what exactly happened between Tem and Idris Abdullahi. This was back before the second pit stop. It was that 2 wide battle course through the chase chicane, and unfortunately just a little bit of contact, innocent contact between the pair, and it said Idris Abdullahi to the grass. But then we just had this for Goffin and Heinz Mayer. This was on lap 25, starting it and going in towards Terminal 2. Mayer thinking about a move, looked up the inside, went all in, Goffin went to turn in, and well, it takes 2 to tango, and unfortunately both drivers there misinterpreting the actions of the others. I think Goffin thought he was safe to turn in, meanwhile Heinz Mayer thought he was safe to go for the move, and unfortunately Goffin's had to tow, and Mayer's been able to get that car turned around. But the damage done to both their races is significant, and it's promoted a few drivers up the order. But back to your penultimate lap we go. And as we do, well, unfortunately, it does mean Paul Goffin's in the pit lane now, and I do wonder with that tow whether we'll see him make his way back out at the end of this race, or whether he will be our one and only retiree from this race. He will be still classified as a finisher, given the fact that he's well within the 75% distance of the race being completed, and within 5 laps of the race winner. Whether it's going to be Pentelar and Reynolds, however, that is what we're yet to see. As we look back from the rear of your leader coming down the hill now, and onto the brakes here, through Forestdale where he goes, and Pentelar right now, well, I think he's just putting the faith here. The Ford Mustang will be able to outpower that Mercedes. It's not the same that Pentelar's not trying, but Reynolds is definitely right now looking to be the more aggressive of the drivers, and it is showing. But that Ford able to open up the gap initially until they get to the midpoint of the rundown Conrad under the Fuso board, and more in towards the next braking zone they'll come. And at this point, well, Reynolds 2 tenths behind, but under braking will close up little by little. I think he's going to have to go for a lunge on this if he wants to make it work. But does he do it at the conventional spots? Does he do it where Pentelar will know he needs to go defensive? Or does he do it elsewhere? Does he think about perhaps at Murray's Bend, for example, this corner? Or does he perhaps do it at the start of the final lap? Because they come out of the corner, they go on to one last tour of the circuit. As the white flag waves, we're on to the white flag lap. It is lap 27 to 27 we'll get here today in round number 4 of the championship. But will we see a new winning name come the end of this one? Or will Stuart Reynolds make himself a three-time winner? Well, this lap will decide it. As in the rear of the picture, there's Niels Core, 3rd on the podium by looks of things, regardless now of what happens. But as Reynolds pursues, will we jump on board with your championship leader and the Fury Sims, what the defending champion from season 7, 9 right now. It's not what he expected coming out of the pit lane the second time around, but still, he can always deliver the unexpected and try and find a move. But where does he go for it as that car bounces around there for Pentelar? Poor run out of Griffin's Bend, and Reynolds here so close, but Pentelar immediately defends on the inside, puts it to the middle of the road, and Reynolds at this point, well, he knows that number 12 is going to be made as wide as humanly possible. There's no exceptions here right now for Pentelar. He will do everything right, and Reynolds here's got a glimpse onto the back. Oh my goodness, he brushes the wall he almost hit earlier on. He does hit it this time, and for Stuart Reynolds, well, can he keep this car pointed in a straight line? I think he can there, and well, it may have only looked like a small glance, but small glances like that can damage the suspension. It can knock the wheels out of alignment, and for Stuart Reynolds, I think that's a brush that's opened up the gap to 8 tenths. Now all Pentelar needs to do, he doesn't need to look behind him, he needs to look ahead of him. He's got to now every corner from this point onwards and just not make any mistakes. It sounds simple enough, but when the stakes are this high, Nothing is easy in these GT4s. And coming down our Forest elbow. Now it's a brush with the wall there. No closer, no further than that. And now down onto Conrad. 7 tenths is the gap. And Reynolds here, well, you can definitely tell the body language that Mercedes is saying that something's not quite right, and that gap will slenderly come down with the bodywork damage as well. He's going to lose a couple of miles now on this straight compared to what he would normally gain, and therefore Reynolds will inch closer. But gap now 6 tenths there. Onto the brakes they go, and Pentelar at this point in towards the chase. 9, he's cleared. Turn 21. Turn 22 has been ticked off the list. And Murray's Bend is the last corner of the day for him as he comes down to the braking zone here. Well, what a day this has been. Stuart Reynolds may have taken pole, but Pentelar in the end sprung a surprise in the second pit stop. He undercut his way, and he takes victory here today. The first win of the season for Matthias Pentelar for RD Sim Sport overall and in Pro. Stuart Reynolds comes home runner-up today with a brush with the wall. And Niels Core rounds on the podium there. It's 2 Mustangs in between them. A Mercedes on that podium with Niels Core having another solid third place finish for Satellite Race. In Matthias Tem in the end, coming home in 4th place after his race-long battle with Benny Abdullahi that did end in unfortunate circumstances between the two of them. But the Fury Sim Sport driver takes 4th place ahead of Daniel Perry for Paddock Motorsport, who had nowhere to go other than 5th in this one. And Idris Abdullahi will bring home 6th place, but 9 today, it could have been a top 5. And Mark Johnson finally does it. He finally lands his first and win of the season. I don't believe my eyes, ladies and gentlemen. The day has finally come for Track Mouse Racing, albeit it's not a 1-2, because Lee Barrage in the end brings on home the runner-up spot there for Boosted Motorsport. And Stephen Codman, well, he takes 3rd place. He does make it a double podium for Track Mouse Racing, and well, today the bad luck curse seems to go away. 10th place, it'll be Guy Edwards, who puts together a brilliant recovery drive from the back of the field to finish 10th, just ahead of Ian Anderson, who did manage to pass Rob Sharp with that absolutely audacious move into McPhillary Park. He was 4th for now. Rob Sharp completed the AM top 5 at 12th, and then Martin Rendell brought to home 13th place, and then it will be a bit of time before we do get to Ollie Carmodine, who sees his finish line in the distance. But as he rolls his way on down, well, not too long to go now as these drivers head on through. But indeed, Ollie Carmodine here just taking it nice and easy as he gets ready to see the finish. And also we will be waiting for Chris Jennings. Unfortunately, we have lost Heinz Mayer, who's had to retire the car from this race due to damage. And also we did see Paul Goffin. But with Mayer finishing on the lead lap, it has put him to the back end of the lead lap in 16th place, as Carmodine takes 7th in the M class, 14th overall. And we've got a bit of time before Chris Jennings will see that checker flag. In fact, here he is. And Paul Goffin, of course, will be classified as finishing 2 laps down after his altercation with Mayer. And between the two of them, Ryan Penny and Jules Gardner finishing a lap down, 17th and 18th, as Chris Jennings is the last lead lap finisher on the road, at least, with a personal best at the end as well. Well done to him for that. A 2-minute 13.655, and that seals the deal for him in 15th place after his huge moment of Philly Park into Skyline midway through the race. But as our drivers cool down, ladies and gentlemen, well, what a race this one has been. And well, for Mark Johnson right now, I can imagine he's going to be absolutely screaming in joy inside that car. In fact, I don't know whether he'll be screaming in joy or whether he'll be crying at the moment in tears of joy, for the simple reason, at Imola, it was the fuel that held him back. At Long Beach, it was a major error that stopped him from taking at least 2nd place behind his teammate, if not the win, with it all going wrong for Track Mouse Racing. And last time out in the wet at VIR, it was definitely a spin or two, and the same for Stephen Codman. But here today, Track Mouse Racing making a double podium, albeit they just had one little usurper who managed to squeeze between them, and that was Boosted Motorsport's Lee Berridge, who took the fight to them. He couldn't quite take the AM win, but he definitely took 2nd place and kept them both on their toes. But today, all 3 of those drivers putting on an absolutely stellar performance on the AM podium, and we're lovely to see them all together being in the pack there just behind the cars of Daniel Perry and Matthias Tem to make the way to the pit lane, and that is worth a photo or two, ladies and gentlemen, I can tell you that. But with that, we now look to our race results subject to any stewards' inquiries, and here they are. And as we can see, after a rather straightforward 60 minutes of racing, but to be fair, we saw some absolutely enticing and exciting moments of battling when things were absolutely on the limit, but the strategy was straightforward today. Well, round number 4 saw a first time win of the season for Matthias Pentelar, the RD Sim Sport driver for what was the Flying Finns, bringing home an incredible win by 4 tenths of a second over Stuart Reynolds, the Fury Sim Sport driver, runner-up in the end and losing out in the second pit stop, and Pentelar, a much quicker stop, got the job done. Neil's caught at third place in the end for Satellite Racing, and the Ford Mustang driver wasn't quite able to stay with the top two, but he was able to break away from the rest of the field, and that's been a bit of a theme for him in the previous season, this one, and on the podium once again. And behind the 42 driver, it was a further, what was 17 seconds before you got to Matthias 10 for Fury Sim Sport, who definitely enjoyed the racing today versus good friend and rival Ben Idris Abdullahi, but unfortunately, a little bit of contact between the two of them, definitely ending their battle on a bit of a sour note, but I'm sure they'll talk about it, and indeed, I think it may be treated as a racing incident between them. From the Dutchman, it was then the Britainer Daniel Perry for Paddock Motorsport, who definitely had a bit of a quiet race in 6th, being promoted to 5th through the demise of Idris Abdullahi, who then finished behind him in 6th place there for Satellite Racing. From the Frenchman, it was then your AM winner of Mark Johnson for Trackmouse Racing ahead of Lee Berridge, runner-up in the class, 8th on the road, and a grand total of 8 seconds behind. The boosted motorsport driver was able to just hold off Stephen Codman to the end, beat him on strategy today, with the Trackmouse Racing driver losing out and finishing 3rd in AM, 9th overall, and Guy Edwards completed the top 10 there for 6-7 Motorsport. It was 2 seconds back to Ian Anderson, who unfortunately tried to use the undercut that Codman had done on the opening stint, but it didn't quite work out for Anderson, and almost put him at risk of losing 4th in the AM class until he fought hard with Rob Sharp to take it back. That's why he was 11th best of the rest to see next Tuesday ahead of the Bathurst Racing Porsche driver. Martin Rendell was the third 4 seconds behind, losing out to Sharp over the distance, the privateer, with Ollie Carbadine a bit further adrift there, and indeed almost 2 minutes off the race winner, but the Rowan Worthy driver ahead of Chris Jennings for Axis Sim Sports, who was your last lead lap finisher, and great to see him back out there, recovering from his huge shunt from at Finley Park into Skyline. Heinz Mayer finished a lap down as classified, retiring the car right at the end due to a technical issue, picked up as a result of the damage that he received from his contact with Paul Goffin, who sadly did retire and was classified as 2 laps down, last off finished in 19th for Sim Racing Magazine, and between the two, Oris Racing's Ryan Penny and Jules Garner for Sim Racing Magazine. But in terms of your AM finishing positions, because of course we have an AM Drivers' Championship, here we can see the confirmation, and they'll definitely want to frame that and put it on the wall. Mark Johnson, your winner for Trackmouse Racing by 8.2 seconds of a boosted Motorsports. Lee Berridge, that first win finally coming to Johnson at the full time of asking, and Stephen Codman completing a double podium for Trackmouse Racing, but not quite the 1-2. He was only 8 tenths adrift in the end. Ian Anderson, 4th place there, a whole 20 seconds off of the podium, but to be fair, he was the best of the rest by a margin, and the Bathurst Racing driver Rob Sharp thought he had 4th until Ian Anderson went all in at Finley Park in the Battle of the Scots, and in the end, Anderson was able to make it count. Martin Reynolds a further 4 seconds behind, the privateer enjoying a good run, but not quite on the pace of the top 5, but well clear of Ollie Carwadine for Rowan Worthy, who was ahead of his teammate of Heinz Mayer, the first fish, a lap down. Oris Racing's Ryan Penny was 9th ahead of Jules Garner for Sim Racing Magazine, and then it was a retirement from the race, 2 laps down, but classified as finisher for Sim Racing Magazine's Paul Goffin after his battle with Heinz Mayer. Definitely ended on a bit of a difficult note into Griffin's Bend with only 2 laps to go. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes your rundown of the race results and concludes our racing here today at the Mount Panorama Racing Circuit. But the good news is our broadcast is not quite complete as yet, because coming up in approximately 5 minutes time will be our post-round interviews of the day, and we're hearing from a selection of drivers, and I'm sure they've got plenty to say about the racing here in Australia, so don't go anywhere. You won't miss the interviews that are just around the bend. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, it is time to kick off our post-round interviews. What has been an exciting evening of racing action at Bathurst, and we start off by hearing from the man today who has taken his first win of the season, because joining me now in the interview room is none other than Matthias Pentelar. Good evening to you, Matthias. What a way to take your first win and to prove that you're the king of the mountain at Bathurst. You must be absolutely proud.
Hello there. Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah, that was a fun round. I always enjoy this track.
Well, definitely a circuit you enjoy. And talking about the day, qualifying, we saw you put yourself second on the grid, but a couple attempts behind Stuart Reynolds. Was there more time out there?
Yeah, the qualifying was you could gain a lot of time by good slipstream, and I think with a better slipstream I could have been at least closer, but I think doesn't matter much here if you start P1 or P2, and it worked out in the end anyway, because I was leading the race after the second corner.
Now, just on leading the race, of course, we did see you make quite a bit of a daring move going through the opening couple course to take the lead. Was it always the plan to try and lead the race as much as possible, or were you perhaps wanting to slipstream as well at some point?
On the first lap, I had the inside for the second corner, so I decided to go for it, because it's super difficult to keep the hang around on the outside because of the camber in the corner. And then I just wanted to see how the pace between me and Stuart and also Niels would measure up. And then I did a couple of mistakes, and Stuart got past me. So then I decided to save some fuel and tires, and try to make the move later in the race.
I see. And in terms of the middle stint, we saw yourself and Stuart very close together, and it did look as though Stuart really started to try and run away from you at that point. But every time he set a new fastest lap, you were right there with him. It looks like you still had some pace to hand.
Yeah, I was saving as much fuel as possible on that stint, and I think I gained a little bit in the pits because of that.
And then going on to the final stint, we saw you come out of the pit lane 2 seconds ahead of Stuart Reynolds. But if we know Stuart, we know that he's going to hunt you down very quickly. Were you expecting that he would be right with you going on to the final laps?
Yeah, I wasn't surprised at all. Yeah, I also had a little bit of traffic on the mountain, so I think Stuart got a second back there as well, and Stuart did a really good job as always with the Merc, and it also keeps the tires going longer in the last few laps. I was really struggling with the tires, and I'm not just trying to rely on the straight line speed that the Mustang has.
Now, you definitely used that straight line speed to your advantage, but on the final lap, we saw Stuart get very close at the starter lap, but coming out of turn 6, out of Quarry Bend, I should say, he had a bit of a brush with the wall. I don't know if you noticed that, but that seemed to open up the gap enough.
Yeah, I noticed he dropped back a little bit. I wasn't worried him getting close at the start of the lap, because that's another danger zone with the Mustang, because it has a huge advantage climbing up the mountain. But I knew that on the downhill section, if he gets close, I need to be really on my toes.
Well, you definitely managed to nail that final lap where Stuart perhaps got it slightly wrong, and in the end, just held on for your first win of the season. I mean, given the level of competition, it must feel quite special to take a win.
Yeah, I think I didn't get a win last season. I think I had a bad luck a few times. So it's been a while since I've been last on the winner's podium, and hoping to get some more. I'm definitely have my eye on the North Life around. I think the forks would be really, really nice there.
Oh, 100%. We'd love to see you take the win at the Nordschleife in a few weeks' time, but that's in round 7. Next up, in 2 weeks' time, we do make our way to Germany, but it's for the Hockenheim Ring. What can we expect from you there?
Probably a lot of track limit infringements. It's quite a tricky track, very technical. I think the Porsches and the Mercedes will be good there, but definitely not planning to make it easy for them.
All fair play. Well, we look forward to seeing whether you can conquer those pesky track limits in 2 weeks' time. But just before we do let you go, is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast?
I'm gonna give it to Peter Sigler, who made the really nice looking paint that you got to enjoy on the broadcast.
Oh, 100%. A lovely livery on the car, and it goes with a lovely drive from yourself. Matthias, congratulations on taking that victory today. A well-deserved win at Bathurst. We look forward to seeing what you can bring to the table when we head to the Hockenheim Ring 2 weeks from today. But until then, savour the moment and have a lovely rest of your evening.
Thank you, and see you.
So here and there, ladies and gentlemen, from our winner overall and in pro today, Matthias Pentelar. And for RD Sims, what mentioned that in qualifying he had a little bit more time to use, but in the end, it was the race that mattered most. It didn't matter where he started on pole or second, because they'd be starting side by side going into turn 1, and being on the inside to turn 2 is what enabled him to take the lead. But he expected that he was always going to face stiff competition from Stuart Reynolds on the opening stint, and indeed all the stints, but it was a better second pit stop that was the differentiator. And after all the fuel saving he'd done in the second stint, that's what enabled him to get ahead, with Reynolds also getting slightly caught up behind another driver coming into the pits. However, on that final stint, it was always going to be very close, and in the end, a small brush with the wall for Stuart Reynolds when the tyres were going for Matthias Pentelar was the difference, and it saw the RD Sim Sport driver bring home that first win of the season. And whilst he may not fancy his chances at the Hockenheim Ring compared to the Nordschleife, you never know as he goes to Track Limit City next time out in terms of where he might be able to make it 2 from 2, or at least put himself back on that podium. But in that, ladies and gentlemen, we've got far more interviews to come. And therefore, as we do get ready for our next interview, we'll be very shortly back for number 2. And so, ladies and gentlemen, it's now over to our second interview, and joining me now in the interview room is none other than Niels Core. Niels, good evening to you, and well, what a day you've had today. 3rd place at qualifying, 3rd place in the race. A little bit of a lonely race, perhaps, but at the same time, a fun one because you've earned a podium out of it.
Hello, Paul. Yeah. In the end, I can only be happy about that result, but I was at the start a bit frustrated that I dropped to 4th and then couldn't overtake Matthias quickly enough to stay with the top 2, because I do think I would have had the pace to do so.
Oh, I see. Well, unfortunate, like you say, in terms of the race start not really adding up to what you wanted to achieve. But if we just dial it back to qualifying then, I get the feeling that perhaps you weren't happy with your qualifying lap. You had the pace to change the top 2. Was it also there to take pole in qualifying, perhaps?
I think without any draft, I wouldn't have been able to get the pole, but I would have potentially been able to get on the first row. But overall, I was pretty happy with the qualifying result, actually.
Oh, absolutely fair to be happy with that qualifying lap. And like you say, on the opening laps, losing out and falling behind. And was it an instantaneous in terms of, as soon as you realised you were down in 4th place, right, that's it, 3rd's going to be the highest you can go? Or was it only as the race went on, it really dawned, okay, I just can't catch up now?
I mean, obviously, you always try to just... I mean, I managed to keep the gap the same, and it was always going up and down a bit. But yeah. And after the first stop, I kind of already knew if they don't somehow get together, I'm not going to be able to fight for the win.
I see. And obviously, with your race then being more dependent on the leaders making mistakes and perhaps knocking themselves back to you, at that point, perhaps a silly question to ask, but how do you manage to be so consistent and keep your concentration levels so high over the mountain? Because I can imagine at that point, you're really just looking to specs in the distance to see, are they having a mistake? If not, it's another lap by yourself.
I think for for a track like this, you just need a lot of experience and practice. And luckily, I've already done quite a few races on this track, so you just start getting, once you get into a rhythm, it just yeah, it's actually not that hard to keep up the pace and stay consistent. What was actually a bit more of a challenge for me today was that the quick release on my wheel, it just kept coming loose. So every time I got down the hill after, my wheel was wobbling, and I always had to smash it so it goes back in. And yeah, I was just very relieved after crossing the finish line without my wheel disconnecting.
I mean, as far as having to deal with technical issues on the fly going, that's quite a technical issue to have. And like you say, having to constantly slam at your wheel back in place to make sure the quick release doesn't go, and therefore you don't get that disconnection. I mean, that must have been scary at some point. How could you maintain concentration whilst having to do that as well? That's the equivalent of, say, Senna when he did finally win at Brazil all those many years ago, having to constantly only use 1 or 2 gears.
It was certainly not easy. I think I actually hit the wall slightly one lap. But I got luckily only like, I think 19 seconds optionals, which didn't seem to really affect my pace at all. So I got kind of quite lucky there. But yeah, it was definitely, yeah, not a great experience. I noticed, didn't even notice during the practice or the qualifying. I only noticed when we were on the starting grid. I noticed, oh, that wheel is a bit loose. And then I took it off and wanted to put it back on again. But seemingly when you take the wheel off, the force feedback just started going like crazy. So I couldn't even get the wheel back on. So I had to turn the wheelbase off, put the wheel back on, and then just about got it started before everyone started pulling off the grid. So that was already not optimal before the start. But I managed to keep it running through the race.
I mean, credit to you. I think many would have panicked to that point, but the fact you were able to get it going just literally before we went green flag racing, that's testament to the fact, your commitment. And in the end, a 3rd place, a good score there. No doubt about it, another podium. Although I did have to ask, it did look as though in your early battle that you did have to make your way back into 3rd, there was a little bit of damage on the car. Is that correct? Because we saw some damage at the front, but we're not quite sure whether it was actual damage or not.
Yeah, these GT4 cars are quite sturdy, so it doesn't really affect you too much if you have a bit of contact. That contact, when I tried to get past Matthias Tem, I unfortunately misjudged his exit speed and kind of smacked his rear a bit. But yeah, that didn't really affect me or him. That damage is usually fine.
Oh, fair play. And like you mentioned earlier on, after making that pass, it was really waiting to see what would come in front. But 3rd place, another good haul of points, and it's onwards to the Hockenheim we go in 2 weeks' time. What's the plan for the German circuit?
Well, it's definitely probably out of all the German tracks, that's one of my least favorite tracks, I'd say. But it has some good long straights, so I'm hoping that the Mustang will do all right there.
And I do have to ask, now that you've mentioned it, why is it one of your least favourite circuits in Germany?
I think we just have more fun circuits. I just generally don't really enjoy the layout of it. Yeah, that's really about it. I just much prefer tracks like the Nürburgring, obviously. which we have coming up later in the season. So I'm very much looking forward to that.
Oh, that's absolutely fair. Some circuits just don't gel with some drivers, and I can completely appreciate where you come from that. But Nils, just before we do let you go, is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast?
Well, big shout out to Satellite Racing, all of our sponsors, and also to Ben, who had a bit of bad luck today, but I'm sure we will do better next time.
Well, we look forward to seeing yourself and Ben back out on the circuit in 2 weeks' time, looking to go for big points once again. But until then, congratulations on third place and making it to the podium, even if it wasn't the way you wanted the race to go, but still a solid result. And have a wonderful rest of your evening, good sir.
Thank you.
So hearing that, ladies and gents, and from by the sounds of things, a little bit of a disappointed Nils Korn, understandably, but he did have the pace to be able to win the race in his own opinion, or at least stay with the top two, but lost out at the start, fell back to fourth, and had to battle his way back ahead of Matthias Tem in order to be able to move into third. But by that point, as we have seen in the pictures on your screen, the gap to the leaders was too big, and then he really was at the mercy of hoping that something would go wrong between Stuart Reynolds and Matthias Pentelar, but it never came. So therefore, a very frustrating end to his charge of the win, albeit all the way in that first stint. Within 20 minutes, he knew what the writing was on the wall. I mentioned there about the fact he also had to deal with quite the array of technical issues, particularly the quick release on his sim steering wheel, constantly unleashing itself. And well, to give you an idea of the quick release, as seen in real-life racing cars, is essentially a release mechanism that allows you to take the steering wheel off of its mount. That's why it's a quick release. It's a rapid way of doing so, and well, it was also a big technical part of bringing all the rig together. But he was able to make sure it did not come apart too far to disconnect his steering wheel and enable him to keep on driving. And for Nils Korn, definitely one of these rounds today, perhaps, where all the stress is built up at once. Another Hockenheimring may not be a circuit he enjoys as much as some other German circuits, but you never know, he might be able to find fortune and favour there, where the power is for Mustang. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we've had 2 interviews with pro drivers, and now we're going to head to the AM class, and we'll be back very shortly for a very special AM interview. And well, ladies and gentlemen, there's only one driver we can kick off our AM interviews with. It's none other than the man who finally takes his first AM win of the season. It's taken 4 rounds, but it's finally happened. He joins me now. It's Mark Johnson. Mark, good evening to you. I mean, you must be feeling quite emotional right now.
Good evening, Paul. It's been a long time coming. I think the last time I spoke to you on the podium was probably about 4 years ago in UKSR GT3.
Oh, goodness me, that long ago. You're right, I think. It's been ages.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's been a long time coming after various mishaps and calamities on my behalf, usually, or just pure bad luck. But, yeah, I'm ecstatic because I love this track as well. I watch it every year. I'm always up watching about 9 hours of the 12 hours. So it's high on my radar, this circuit. Love it. Only my favourite car.
Fantastic. And I mean, you showed your love for the circuit straight away in qualifying, took pole in the end, and did so by what was a couple attempts. I mean, it was a close session between yourself and your teammate Stephen Codman, and Lee Berridge is a bit further behind. Was that the way you expected qualifying to play out?
I knew both me and my teammate had good pace before it because we just sort of offset our lap times against each other on G61 or whatever and compare them and then try and beat it. So we were actually both in 211s pre-race. So we were right up there on the pace, but for whatever reason tonight, I guess you drive within yourself a little bit when it matters. And yeah, we're still both happy with 212s, I think it was. So yeah, it was decent pace.
Oh, without a doubt, decent pace. But for all that pace you both showed in qualifying, what happened at the start? Because Lee Berridge started third, and then Sonny was ahead of the both of you.
Yeah, I was just talking to Lee about that off to the sides, and because it's such a tight line there on the side, that if you're on the left side of the track, and the Aston on cold tyres has got a bad habit of understeering out and could have clobbered someone on the outside of me, so I just nipped it in tight and thought I'm probably going to lose out to someone getting a run on me, and that's exactly what happened. But I didn't expect to lose to both the little Porsche and Lee, but Lee's BMW just powered on past me up the straight, so there was nothing I could do other than slot in behind him really at the next corner.
So
But
Lee had a quick start, and after that you had to chase him down. Although you did quite quickly chase him down, it looked as though you got very comfortable in the Aston Martin very quickly.
yeah, again, I wasn't going too crazy. Didn't know how long the tyres would last, and I've had so much bad luck. I thought I don't want to stick it in the wall, so I was still driving within myself a little bit, but I was still trying to push. But and then Lee ran wide at turn 1, I think, about the third or fourth lap, I think it must have been. But it was just all I needed to steam past him on the left, and then just gradually pulled away. So that was good, and it kept me honest. He stayed around, and then Steve was also hovering around, my teammate. So I had to keep a wary eye on them too while still trying to push. And I had Daniel as company as well in front in pro class. So I just kept chasing him for quite a while. It gave me something to focus on and not let my mind drift until the pit stops. Yeah, and that all went well as well for once. So tonight, each time I crossed my fingers and thinking something might go wrong, it all actually panned out quite well.
Oh, goodness me. Well, definitely, I think right now, I think no matter how many ladders you've stepped under and how many black cats have walked across the street in front of you, I think all that bad luck now has disappeared away. And just on the strategy, of course, we did see a very extended opening stint from most drivers. You committed to the maximum stint as well. Was that always the plan? Or after you'd taken lead, did you think, you know what, play it safe, just go the longest on both stints?
Yeah, I was doing a bit of fuel saving as soon as I pulled a little gap on Lee and Steve, and like I say, I kept an eye on them, but I was definitely saving fuel, and I was just trying to extend for another lap, which I think I did in the end, so that was quite good. And I did also that for the second stop as well, so that was all working out okay. So yeah, for once, it all went very well tonight. I think all my bad luck has been kicked away in one night, so all the good luck's been saved up for this event.
Oh,
But
most
yeah, it was
definitely.
great. I'm very happy. It was a great result with Trackhouse Racing as well, with Steve in third. So he almost got Lee on his undercutting strategy, but it didn't quite work out the second stop for some reason. But still great pace from Steve.
Oh,
So we're very happy.
Oh, indeed. And Steve done a very good job as well. Not quite the 1-2 that you guys have been chasing, but you came close to it. And something tells me going towards the Hockenheimring in 2 weeks' time, it's going to be an opportunity not just for another win for yourself, but perhaps a 1-2 for the team.
Well, that'd be very nice. Yeah, it would certainly a long time overdue. So it's good to have Steve back this year, because I think last season I was running on my Todd. So it's always good to have a teammate to pitch yourself against and try and get a good result. No, I think we do push each other on with the lap times, because Steve's very quick as well. So it makes me up my game just to keep pace with him. So it's working out well this season so far, thankfully. Although I did have bad luck at VIR again.
Oh, indeed. The two of you pushing each other on very well, and the bad luck seems to have finally gone away, and we look forward to seeing what you can both do in our next round. But just before we do let you go, Mark, I do have to ask, is there anyone you'd like to dedicate or give a shout out to on the broadcast this evening?
Well, definitely dedicate to you, Paul, because you're a fantastic broadcaster and you bring the races alive every week. And also dedicate to my teammate, Steve, who's had a bit of a tough week this week, and he's still come through and done a great job. So that's it. And thanks to all the SRM guys as well, because I love this league. It's brilliant fun.
Oh, brilliant. Also, go on.
No, that's it. Thank you. I'm ecstatic, and shall smile like a Cheshire cat for the rest of the evening instead of frowning and cursing myself.
Oh, that's the spirit, Mark. Well, I can tell you one thing. Thank you for joining me for an interview this evening. It's been great to have you in, and finally I get to hear that happiness and that the bad luck streak seems to have gone away. A brilliant result
I'm
for you.
ecstatic. Thank you very much, Paul.
Oh, no worries. I'll leave you to it. Savour it, enjoy it, and have a wonderful rest of your evening, and we'll see you
Thank
at the
you very
Hockenheim
much.
Ring.
Great stuff. Thanks, Paul. Cheers.
Take care.
Bye.
So here and there from a very jubilant Mark Johnson, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, I could hear it in his voice. I think we could all hear it, how ecstatic he was. And in the end, we just wanted to celebrate it. And the Trackhouse Racing driver deservedly wanted to celebrate the win after it has been a frustrating streak of bad luck and races not going his way. And indeed, in Season 7, the bad luck was there as well. Multiple occasions in his McLaren last season where he was on course to win when it all fell apart from him. And here today, once again, well, was it going to be bad luck or was it not? But no bad luck seemed to strike. And as he mentioned there, every time he came to a crossover point in the race, whether it was taking pole position, whether it was leading the race, making an overtake, pitting, crossing his fingers, praying something wasn't going to go wrong. And indeed, when you've had so much bad luck, you're going to feel that way. But the relief is absolutely tangible there. And well, for Mark Johnson, what a way to take a first win. Controlling the narrative, albeit Lee Berridge did sneak ahead, but he was able to take it back quite quickly, the lead, and then never looked back. But with that, ladies and gents, we've got one more interview to come, and we'll be back very shortly for our final interview of the day. And so, ladies and gentlemen, we come to our final interview of the evening, and we stay in the AM class, but we hear from the man who is a runner-up today in AM. It's Lee Berridge. Good evening to you, Lee. Well, what a fun day you've had here. Not quite the win, but you definitely kept Track Mouse Racing honest in your BMW.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Nice to have a chat with you finally. Yeah, no, it was a good evening overall. But you know what, I have to take my hat off to Mark. He totally owned that one, and he totally deserved that win. That was good. That was good fun.
Oh, indeed. I mean, I think everyone's over the moon for Mark taking that first AM win. But for yourself, I mean, you had a bit of a day of two halves, if you don't mind me saying. Qualifying, 10th overall, 3rd in class. I mean, did you miss some time in qualifying? Because the difference between that and your race pace was quite sizable.
Yeah, I don't know what it was. I was really struggling with quali. I think the BMW just warms its tyres up that little bit slower. So I wasn't starting to come in until lap 3 and 4, which with this being such a long lap, that was right towards the end of quali. And I don't know if you caught it on the broadcast, but I stoved it into the wall on my last hot lap. Again, pushing too hard like I did a couple of times in the race, and it just overheats the tyres on the rear, and then it just turns into a BMW drift car.
Well, to be fair, we know this BMW has been a little bit slippery on its rear end, but you've been doing a great job of taming it over the course of the season thus far. And whilst it may have gone wrong at the end of qualifying, you're starting the race. I mean, what exactly did you do there? What Weetabix did you have for breakfast this week? Because that was an incredible start.
I don't know, starts seem to be my things. I did it last time out at VIR on Mark, and you know, slipped it straight up the inside. I don't know what it is. I tend to, I mean, to be fair, I had the outside of turn 1, so I was able to get on the power earlier than Mark, and obviously we had a chat, and he had to take the tighter line, which means that he was likely to throw the rear end out, whereas I had a smooth exit and just, yeah, absolutely blasted away from him. But it's just a shame that I couldn't keep the thing on the grey stuff and stay in front of him. So I think it was lap 3 or 4. Just too heavy on the brakes. I think I locked the fronts up and just run wide going into, I think it was turn 1. Is it Hell's Corner?
Yes.
And once you're on the grass, getting it offered there. And that was it. I'd lost all that speed down the straight, and he took it back. But do you know what? I think it would have been inevitable. Mark's pace was such that he either would have been on me for that entire stint, and I probably would have crashed by trying to keep in front of him. So actually, I think it kind of worked out the right way for me in the end.
Well, it may have naturally been going the way of Mark over the distance, but one thing that didn't go their way was a 1-2 at Track Mouse. You were able to make sure that you were able to slot between them, although you did have a great race-long battle with Stephen Codman after Mark.
Yeah, I did. I don't know what he did on that first stint. He obviously went in, pitted early, and yeah, he just had a blinder. But I think what undone it for me a little bit there was that I changed the front tyres, because I was a bit concerned that this track over the mountain was killing the front. Certainly the front tyre was going off, and I just thought that would just keep it in for the end of the race. And yeah, coming out on cold tyres again, 2-3 laps to start getting them dialed in, and that probably made the difference. But you know, that final stint, I don't know what it was. He must have just had a bad outlap after his second stop. Bearing in mind I'd already had a moment myself on my in lap, and yeah, got back in front of him. But towards the end, my pace dialed off. He was a couple of seconds back, and I thought I only need to lose a second a lap to him It doesn't matter. Let him catch. Just keep it on the grey stuff and bring it home. I was trying not to do a Max Verstappen and go for a hot lap.
Well, to be fair, you did that exactly right and brought home a brilliant second place finish and one of your strongest performances of the season thus far. I mean, for yourself in the BMW, it definitely looks like you're taming what is a little bit of a loose car. And can we expect the same from you at the Hockenheimring in 2 weeks' time, or perhaps even a first win of the season?
Do you know what? I hope so. I would like to win. The BMW just seems to suit my driving style. I like a car that's slightly loose on the back. It helps to steer it to the apex. And, you know, I had the Mustang last season, and keeping the back end on that under control, it felt like it had zero feeling. You know, it would start to slide and then just go with no communication, whereas the BMW is quite communicative on the rear, and I like that. But it's hard to keep it fast and, you know, around these sort of twisty circuits. It's very flighty. But, yeah, it suits my driving style. I'm hoping one of these tracks, it's got to come right for me. It'll be nice.
And then if I do say, obviously we've got the Hockenheimring next time out, but you've got 4 rounds left. If there is one round where it may come right for you out of, and I'll just repeat what rounds we've got left to go. We've got the Hockenheimring, we've got Thruxton, the Nordschleife, and Road America. Which one do you think it will be?
Now, do you know what? I would like to say the Nordschleife would probably be my favourite and most likely, since I go there in real life. It's a lot less scary in the virtual world. But I'm going to miss that round. I've got to work, so unless I can take the day off, I'm going to miss that one. So I think other than that, it's probably going to be next week or 2 weeks' time. Hockenheim, probably going to be my best shot. Thruxton's a no for me. It's too tight and twisty. That's not going to work out.
Oh, fair play. Well, we'll definitely be sad not to see you at the Nordschleife, but we look forward to seeing what you can deliver at the Hockenheimring in 2 weeks' time. But just before we do let you go, Lee, of course, lastly, we have to ask, is there anyone you'd like to give a mention or a shout out to on the broadcast?
Yeah, I mean, I'm certain everybody said it, but great job as always, Paul. I'm really starting to enjoy watching our races back with you, you know, doing the commentary. But on a side note, just a sort of quick shout out to my teammate, John Roberts. He's missed the last couple of rounds. We miss you. Hope you come back soon, buddy, and get well soon. I think he's come down with a bit of food poisoning tonight, so hopefully he's not suffering too much, and hopefully I'll see him at Hockenheim.
Oh, indeed. We hope we get to see John back at the Hockenheimrings. It's not quite the same. We haven't got both of the boosted machines out there going for gold. But with that, Lee, it's been a blast having you in the interview room. Congratulations on your podium today. A well-deserved run to second place. We look forward to seeing whether you can promote yourself to victory next time out. But until then, have a wonderful rest of your evening.
Thanks, Paul.
So here and there from Lee Berridge, our final interview of the day, and a very happy day for the Boosted Motorsport driver. And I really like the way he talked about there his feelings for the BMW in terms of he feels though he clicks very well with the car and having that ability to understand the feedback it's giving him on the rear axle. Such an important part of his ability with this car, and a very slippery car that's confounded so many who have taken it on. But talking as well about the fact he felt as though in qualifying, the delta between his qualifying times and his race times was really because of the fact he needed more time to warm the tyres up, something he didn't really have in qualifying given the limited number of laps available with only 15 minutes on the clock, whereas in the race he was able to really get a feel in for the car. That race starting on the outside line, going through the opening quarter, really gave him an advantage and was able to rocket ship his way into lead, although as he mentioned there, expecting that it would gradually go back into the hands of Mark Johnson, and so his fight was for second with Stephen Codman, and Codman on the undercut strategy seemed to have him cornered, but he mentioned the fact that he changed the front tyres and that gave him an advantage. He felt much happier with the front tyres of the car that were wearing down over the mountain, and in the end with Codman also having a little bit of traffic coming onto his final stint, well, Berridge was able to get the job done and just hold on for that second place. But the Hockenheimring, can he make it a first and win of the season? We'll see then, ladies and gentlemen. But with that, we've seen all we can see here today at Bathurst, and it's time for us to wrap up those interviews, but not without giving you a recap of who we've spoken to. And along the way today, in terms of our 4 interviewees, we started off in the pro class with a double bill. Matthias Pentelar was our first interviewee, his first win of the season. We had to catch the inside story from the RD Simsport driver before coming to the third place finisher of Nils Core for Satellite Racing. We then made our way to the AM class, and there it was 2 of our podium finishers once again. A first time win for Mark Johnson for Track Mouse Racing and commemorating it with his first interview of the season. And then we came to the first interview with Lee Berridge of Boosted Motorsport, run up today in the AM class and definitely taking the fight to the Track Mouse Racing team. A big thank you to all 4 of our drivers for their time in the interview room, and indeed well done to them all on their great performances, and we look forward to plenty more performances of their nature and calibre going into our next round at the Hockenheim Ring. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you've enjoyed today's show, and perhaps you're sat there right now itching to give it a go yourself in the GT4, indeed if you want to get on the grid with us here at Sim Racing Magazine, there's no better time to do so, and the way to do so is to join our official Discord. Invite link available on screen as shown there. And if you do, whether you're an esports professional all the way through to a rookie racer, we'd absolutely love to have you. So long as you're up for clean racing and fair racing and respectful and gentlemanly conduct, that's what we're all about at Sim Racing Magazine. And that's why our GT4 Challenge has made it all the way through to its 8th season and is still shining very brightly for the simple reason it's all about fair and fun racing. We'd also like to take a moment to say a big thank you to our series sponsor, and that is of course none other than our title sponsor of Oris Digital. And if you didn't know, small teams can make a huge impact in the digital marketing and e-commerce space, and Oris Digital knows that best. With 20 years of collective experience in growing businesses through online marketing channels via the provision of services including affiliate management, Amazon marketing and digital strategy, Oris Digital delivers tangible results to its clients. So if you'd like to know more about how Oris Digital can help you grow your business, be sure to head to their website today at www.oris.digital. But we'd also like to take a moment, ladies and gentlemen, to say a thank you and a big shout out to our series partners, who do include firstly Oboris Watch. One of our drivers, Rob Sharp, runs Oboris Watch, which designs and markets watch faces for smartwatches running Google's Wear OS operating system. This SRM-themed watch face is available on the Google Play Store by searching for GT4C. It features a pit board that includes your race position, which improves as you near your step target for the day, a racetrack with selectable colours for each sector, and the trademark SRM branding along with other useful information such as heart rate, so you can manage your excitement level in the next SRM race. And if you'd like to know more about Oboris Watch's watch faces for smartwatches, why not head to the website at www.oboris.com. And also, we'd also like to give a shout out to our other series sponsor, or series partner, I should say. Let me get that correct. And that is Roam Worthy. And buying the perfect caravan, motorhome, or camper van can be an activity which leaves you going around in circles, but not with Roam Worthy. Built by technology people who love the road, Roam Worthy provides you with the tools you need to put you in the fast lane to buying the caravan, motorhome, or camper van which meets your requirements via a website that is packed with real stock and no pushy sales personnel. And if you'd like to know more, be sure to head to www.roamworthy.co.uk today. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that's all we've got time for today. And next time out in round number 5, at the end of April on Tuesday the 28th, we make our way to Germany for the Baden-Württemberg State Hockenheim Ring. Sadly, no longer a raw and tour through the local forest. Indeed, we're going to be racing the Grand Prix circuit designed by Hermann Tilke in 2002. But who exactly is going to be able to take on and conquer the tantalising technical test of its 16 corners and its almost 3-mile length? Well, as we head into that round, it does seem as though that while Stuart Reynolds was not quite able to take victory today, his second place means his championship lead is extended ahead of Daniel Perry. But meanwhile, in the AM Championship, with a new name-taking victory, Mark Johnson, well, things may have been blown wide open once again, and it all seems to be shuffling in the AM class, particularly with Lee Berridge wanting a winner of his own next time out. But how exactly will it all go down in our first visit to Germany for the season? We'll tune in next time to find out how the story continues. But until then, we have been Sim Racing Magazine. I've been your host and commentator, Paul Walsh. You've been tuning into a Paul Walsh production. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, remember to stay on track. Good night.